Hello, everybody. Welcome to the October 9th public hearing for the special town meeting scheduled for the 4th of November. I'm going to do a quick roll call. Nat Lowell.
Here.
Joe Topham.
Here.
John Kitchener.
Here.
Hillary Rayport.
Here.
Alternates, Stephen Welch, Abby DiMolina, Abby? Not on? Okay. Howard Matz. Great. Staff members, Leslie Snell,
Here.
Meg Trudell,
Here.
Billy Saab,
Here.
Catherine Ansero. Great. I think we have town council online, correct? He is.
Abby's on now.
Okay. And let the record show that Abby DiMolina is present as well. Take a motion to approve the agenda?
Second.
Motion made by John, seconded by Nat. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, and that's unanimous. I'd like to open up for public comment for items not listed on the agenda, if there's anybody that would like to make a comment.
Good afternoon. I'm Kathy Ward, Silver Street, and I'd just like to say a thank you to Dave and to Tom for getting to this point for this type of meeting, and for all of you on the planning board for your consideration of what's going to be best for the island. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Anybody else? Okay. So I'd just like to lay a little groundwork here first. Just kind of the landscape that we're looking at here. As everyone knows, we are in the midst of an appeal, and I hope John Giorgio straightens me out if I stray here. With a court decision that in the ROH, short-term rentals are only allowed as an accessory use. I think the concern for everyone is that if that prevails, that subsequent lawsuits could have that apply to other zoning districts, therefore making rentals on this island by accessory use only. So with that said, we have two articles before us at this town meeting. I think it's very clear that both of these articles address our zoning concerns and would resolve the legal issues if either one of them was voted in. They both allow the use in the use chart, and they both define it in zoning. So they both would accomplish that goal. I think the question for the community here is how they're willing to do that. Each one of these zoning articles will have consequences. Some of them financial, some of them are a little more difficult to identify, but I think they all have consequences and costs associated with them. So I think we as a community need to decide what costs are acceptable and how we see our island dealing with short-term rentals in the future. So with that said, I'm going to open the public hearing for both of them at the same time. I'm going to offer Brian Borgenson a moment to come up and represent his article if he wishes. And then we are going to do public comment. We're not going to limit your time for public comment. We are going to set a clock at 2 minutes, and that's just so people know where they are. But we are not at this point going to limit your ability to speak. Please try not to repeat. Please be respectful to everybody. And welcome to the mic, Brian, if you choose.
Hello, my name is Brian Borgeson, and I am a working citizen of Nantucket. I was not able to form my own political action committee, so the way that we came to town meeting, a special town meeting here, is to get a bunch of signatures. I had some help with some people collecting signatures and trying to get our word out. The reason we're proposing this is twofold. I think a lot of people have seen my rant at town meeting. This town cannot continue for another year after 5 years of 14 hours, multiple days, multiple bleary-eyed discussion with anecdotal, feckless sod information that has nothing to do with anything that we're talking about. We need to solve this issue. We have businesses, we have seasonal businesses, and we have year-round businesses that are fully affected by this zoning and rentals, and we need to solve this once and for all. This has put friends against friends. This has put neighbors against neighbors. Neighbors are suing other neighbors with other people's money. This has turned into crazy town. People come to Nantucket. People rent houses to come to Nantucket. We have under 1,000 hotel rooms on Nantucket. So if May 17th, the Saturday, there's 4 200-person weddings, and the wedding planners get to those hotels and rent the whole hotels out, no one else comes to Nantucket in the limited season that we're given? Think about that. Just think of that. Tomorrow, I'm not going to be able to attend the FinCom meeting because of the bad weather yesterday and the bad weather today. So it's still our season. I'm still making money. I'm still grossing stuff. I'm still earning so that my family can go out and spend money in restaurants and can pay my taxes and pay my mortgage. So what we've done is we've put together a list of our political action committee, which is the citizens and signatures, and we want to have a town meeting, a single issue town meeting, where we're not discussing roads and paving and money spent on a butterfly farm and having a break and coming back and then having a Saturday and then a full day off and then coming back again. That does not work for the people of Nantucket. We need to get something that works for the people of Nantucket. We need to have it in this special town meeting needs to be under an hour and a half so that people can say yes or no and get out of there and get back to their lives. So I am so frustrated overall with the process. So this is the nuclear option. This is what we've done as a citizen. And I'm sorry to everyone that has to work extra. I know you guys are doing a ton of extra work in the town to get this done, including you, Dave. Like, I understand that, but like this needs to get done. After the court ruling, and we have no idea about the zoning anymore. My customers are asking me, hey, we're coming out for a wedding next year. Are we gonna be able to rent a bunch of houses and go fishing and go sailing on the Endeavor and cater with Patrick and go to Crew and go to Sandbar? Are we gonna be able to do that? And I wanna tell them 100%. I tell them yes now, but I wanna just tell them 100% yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak?
Hi, Amy Eldridge. I couldn't agree more with Brian. And I personally work in an industry that is driven by the tourist season. And I'm not speaking on behalf of Holgate's Island Laundry where I work. I'm speaking as somebody who receives money from short-term rentals. We have been grossly affected by the deregulation of the corporate entities that were renting. So when Copley Group sold off a lot of their houses, a lot of that did not come back online. Obviously, short-term rentals, there's families that are using them and they're not vacation rentals. So we lost quite a bit of income. And we at Holgate's Laundry are open in the winter. We do not make money. We're not rolling over and whatever. We're open as a public service for the community. I mean, we could roll up the sidewalks in December and not roll them back out till May, but we're here for you guys, for the community, for the tourists, for the visitors and the islanders. And we depend on this income to survive during those times, because I take a pay cut in hours so that I don't have to lay off some of my year-round Islanders. And I am blessed that I work for a company that's able to keep 10 year-round people while we're not making a profit. And I think it's really important to understand that cutting some of these short 3 or 4 day weekend events like weddings, comedy festival, things like that, by this no less than 7 days, 7 weeks, and then the remainder of your 49 days, there's 21 days to play with, taking stroll and Thanksgiving out, you're lobbing off a lot of weekends that we've tried to extend our shoulder season so that our people don't have to worry about how they're paying their rent, how they're feeding themselves. I mean, I'm not in it because I rent. I don't have a dog in this fight right now, but I do have a benefit to the short-term rental. And I think that we need to think about how many more people we're going to put into food insecurity, how many people are going to struggle to have to pay their rent, and the cost in making this change. And I respect Mr. Iverson and the planning board for coming up with the plan that they did, but it's cost and effect. If we limit, then you're going to cause the cost of those homes to go up in weekly rentals because you're limiting what they can do. Now you're taking families that would come here that could just barely afford to come here, are not going to be able to come here at all. Some people can only do a 3 or 4 day weekend vacation, so we have to consider those things. And I don't want to be away from my family any more than I have to, but I may have to go supplement my income to offset what you guys are planning to do here tonight. And I agree with Brian. I know I don't want to repeat what I'm saying, but we got to keep the paid political action group out of our local town meetings, because I don't think it's fair that I can't get a lawyer to fight this, but because I don't believe in what Act Now does, but somebody else who supports him has unlimited resources to sue their neighbors and the town. It's a waste of time, it's a waste of money, and I took an hour off from work to come here because this is critically important to my livelihood and many other people in this room. And I just want you guys to think about those things. One, this is coming forward. I would love to see Dave's article, the planning board's article, to be put aside till April, so that we could maybe have more time to look at it and understand it and maybe make adjustments that do work for everybody. Because I'm willing to compromise, but I think you're asking the year-round community to compromise way more, and I don't want to spend any less time away from my family. I had to take on pet sitting and living in other people's homes to offset what I lose in the winter when we aren't making that kind of money, and that's time away from my husband. I mean, I'm gone a week or 2 weeks so that people can go on vacation, and I mean, it's a burden to our family. And my entire life of living here, my husband had worked 2 jobs. He worked for this town for 31 years. He works for Berry Burn Trucking. And if we didn't have his retirement, he'd have to find another job, because we've always had to have 2 jobs in order to support our family of 3. So I greatly appreciate you guys listening to all of us and having this special meeting. And I deeply wish that you guys would consider the people that really are struggling to live here. Thank you.
Amy, sorry.
Thank you, Amy.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
If I just to clarify, I just want to make sure I understand what you meant about the corporate rentals selling off and
So
feeling-
like when we banned corporate rentals and put Mr. Levinson and the Copley Group basically out of business, those houses that he had to sell didn't come back online for us as like short-term rentals. They were doing their own laundry at home.
Yeah,
So
that was sorry, just to interrupt. I want to make sure, my question was about, is that affecting the laundry, or was that affecting?
it's affecting everybody. It's affecting the house cleaners. It's affecting the laundry. The house cleaners bring me the laundry. It's affecting everybody. It's got a trickle-down effect. And I'm okay with that, but there was a cause and effect to what we voted in.
So your point is just to say that we did see some inventory leave, and you did feel like there was a negative effect on your business.
I talked to probably 30 to 50 house cleaners a week that I just wait on, not the rest of even the staff that work the front, and I'm not up front that much this time of year, but they're all saying they're feeling it. Like, I've had some say that they can't believe how much breathing room they had on a Saturday, and like they've had to lay off employees earlier in the season than they would like to. And in fact, that's happening where I work, but because those things are happening. And the corporate ones, tend to have a little more of a concierge service. So if people want daily bed changes, they're doing it and they're dropping me the laundry like every day. Some do the week. So we lost a lot of that midweek stuff. And for the first time ever that I know in the 20 years I've worked for where I work, I had my first layoff before Labor Day because it's just slow. So I just want you guys to consider what that's having on families. And I think it's just going to force people into having to find other jobs, keep people away from their families and out of their homes and out of churches and out of functions and events because they have to go work. So maybe there's less people at town meeting. Maybe there's less people coming to planning board meetings, but it's something we have to think about. And I appreciate your guys' time. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy.
So my name is Penny Dye, and I have just a procedural question, which is a number of people submitted questions ahead of time to the planning board. How are those going to be handled tonight? I don't want to repeat if they're going to be answered.
I'm happy to answer questions.
Are you referring to the letters we've received?
I'm referring to, well, I sent a list of 6 questions in, and I know other people had questions that were sent ahead of time. We were told there was an October 6th deadline. I just want to make sure that those questions are addressed.
We will address them.
Tonight, here?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I would like people to understand the difference between these 2 articles. Article 1 is simple. It addresses Judge Fay's concerns. Subject, it codifies all rentals in the zoning bylaw, subject to existing and future regulations, most likely done through general bylaws. It, in other words, maintains the status quo. Article 2 restricts somebody's right to rent to 49 days between June 15th and August 31st. Plus an additional 21 days in the rest of the year. That is a 70-day limit on the total number of days that a homeowner is allowed to rent on a short-term basis. In 1995, there were 60 inns and hotels here on Nantucket. Today, there are 33. It's been a net loss of 50% in terms of the number of rooms here. It's a fact that 93% of all vacationers to this island who rent come for less than 32 days. They simply cannot afford any longer to come for longer than that. Where are these people supposed to go? I have a question for each planning board member. If Article 2 were to pass, do you really believe that that's going to reduce traffic or make housing more affordable? What is the goal of Article 2? Is it about tea times? Is it about dinner reservations? Is it about having fewer people here? What is it really about? Who is the actual author of Article 2? It sure looks like the Act Now article that Attorney Reed wrote and brought to the select board a month or 2 ago. But it's even more restrictive. Where did the 70-day limitation come from? Has a planning board done any kind of economic impact studies as to what a nearly 40% reduction of weeks available to short-term rent in high season looks like? Who determined that the season is June 15th to August 31st? In my experience, it's 10 or 12 weeks. If you reduce it to 7 weeks of turnover, what does that do? It impacts small businesses here. It impacts people whose livelihood is dependent upon our guests and our visitors. And I guess that's all I have to say, unless somebody has a question. Thank you.
Yep. So on your first one, I'm going, Penny, I'm going to go by your email with the questions, okay? So the first one, is it a citizen's article? The planning board voted to take it on as a planning board article, so it's not a citizen's article, it's a planning board article. Do the planning board members believe that if it passes, it will reduce traffic or make housing more affordable? I would I would say in a very meaningful way, probably not. It will have an effect. And I don't know if any other board members feel differently than I do.
I think the important question that Penny asked is, why are we doing this?
We're getting there.
And that's maybe the most useful question to
Okay.
discuss.
I
Not that
just
the
want
others
to
aren't
make sure
useful
we
as
answer
well,
all of
but
her questions, so I don't
yeah,
wanna-
of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, has the planning board done any recent economic impact studies as to what a nearly a 40% reduction of weeks? We haven't, and I would push back, but I really don't want to get into the numbers here. I mean, we're not numbers people, right? We're zoning people. But I think that you need to understand the amount of available rental units and how they're used and how much of them are used in the height of the season to understand what that impact's going to look like. So the short answer is no, Penny.
But it is the case that there have been economic studies done in other communities that might be useful. I mean, there was an economic study done for Provincetown by the Donahue Institute, which I certainly looked at and studied, and I thought it was informative. But no, I mean, the town could have done over the past 5 years, an economic study would have been really useful for all of us. But that might have been something we would have done, between now and town meeting, and we could still do it. I mean, annual town meeting.
If I might, you had stated that the planning board sponsored the article. The planning board voted so far to get the article onto the warrant.
Yes. Sponsoring it?
Was the planning board involved in writing the article?
No.
Meeting with stakeholders?
I did that.
Okay,
And it was written by town council.
okay. It's important to remember that of the 12,700 houses on this island, fewer than 11% rent on a short-term basis. It is impossible that 11% of all the houses here are responsible for all these challenges that they've been accused of. Just impossible.
Don't disagree.
So,
So, okay, why do we do this? That was one of your questions, too. Well, part of the reason I started down this path, it was because the select board decided that it was the planning board's responsibility to bring forward an article
at a public meeting,
at a public meeting.
they charged you with coming up with this article?
Basically, yes.
Okay. You all are calling it the compromise article. I think it's the conciliatory article,
That's fair.
and that's just my opinion.
Okay.
So,
I think that that's a good time for us to answer why we really did this. And in my opinion, and my board members may not share, but I think they do, is that over the past 6 years, we have supported full codification. And we have tried very hard to get that passed, and it has not passed. Can I finish?
yeah.
So to continue down, at least in my opinion, to continue down this path and to ignore a segment of our population that found it difficult to vote for codifying a use without a certain amount of regulation should be addressed, and an article should be brought forward that gives them the ability to vote for that if they wish.
Two things. It's been stated by two of your members, I believe, that we have voted down codification 6 times. That's not accurate. It's twice. It's Article 59 and Article 66, both of which got more than 60% of the vote.
There's been multiple full codifications at different stages that
Tabled.
have been voted down.
Yep.
Tabled or voted away.
Yeah. We've only
It
voted
is-
on 2, just for the record.
But it has been on the warrant how many times?
Well, it's been 5 years of dealing with this.
Plus a special, so 6. So,
I have a question,
Yeah.
Penny, about the 11%.
Yep.
So I think we should keep in our viewfinder the big picture and not get into who did what. I mean, this is what's on the warrant, and we have to decide what's best for the community. And we definitely need to get this in our zoning one way or another as soon as possible for all the reasons Brian mentioned at the beginning. So I want to be careful about going down too many details. But we are also trying to examine and guide the community and air issues for the community to consider when they decide how they're going to vote. And one question about, what is the problem? There's a lot of disruption on the island in terms of traffic that is upsetting to people, that people want to reduce. We have housing issues that are intractable that we want to take care of. And I believe that the point you're making is 11% of homes rent.
That is the point.
Right.
I'm also making the point that we've averaged over 100 permits for new dwelling units a year
Yeah,
for more than a decade now.
yeah. So the bigger issue is the vacation rentals,
We have a
right?
traffic problem here in February on Old South Road.
Yes.
It's service truck after service
Yes,
truck.
yes.
People are living here. We're almost over 20,000 people here now because of economic opportunity.
Yes, but I just to stay on the 11%, because I was questioning that number. I mean, we have Brian Turbott's analysis, which is assuming that 75% of non-hosted stay and hosted stay units are renting. So I don't know where that came from, but that's one number. And then we also had a video put out by the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities, which was meant for the whole state, about the seasonal communities designation. And Nantucket was the poster child of how short-term rentals are driving out long-term rentals. I'm not making that statement. I'm telling you what the EOHLC put in their statewide video. And they said 22% of homes on Nantucket are used for short-term rentals, and now we have seasonal communities to improve this. So if there's any more detail around these kind of, you could drive a truck through these numbers, and this is making your point about an economic analysis would be useful, but we don't have one, so I'd love to hear.
Yes, the 11%
about
came
that.
from the town records with the local registry
I see. So that's the number of people that
that have registered to short-term rent.
Right. So we also have houses that are renting for 2 weeks only total in a year, and those don't
Are exempt.
register.
That's
Yeah.
correct.
And then we maybe have some people who should register and haven't. Yeah. Okay, thank you. But I don't actually think that we're going to have, I mean, I agree with what David said about his response to your question of, do you really think we're going to have less traffic if we pass Article 2 or Article 1? I think the main reason why we're doing this is that we have got to pass something. We have got to pass something. It has to be one of these articles, or if they both fail, we have to come back with something else, because we can't keep going
I
in
would
this way.
respectfully suggest that if people are only allowed to rent on a short-term basis for 49 days during what somebody has defined as high season, that those houses will be occupied by somebody, whether they're short-term renters, owners' friends, or long-term renters. Thank you.
Thank you, Penny. Did we cover all your questions, Penny, before I move on? Yes. Okay, thank you. Did any other board member have any input on any of those questions? We all good? Matt?
I'm just going to say that more long-term renters might mean more traffic because they bring cars. The people that we're regulating don't bring cars. Just want to throw that at you. The short-term rental people for the weekends, Dave, 7 weeks will let.
Weekends, no, but.
Those are the people that don't bring cars. They bring suitcases with wheels.
They don't bring the cars because the short-term rental comes with a variety of Jeeps in many cases.
It's a separate conversation.
We're getting off track here. We're getting off track here. Ma'am?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Iverson, and members of the board. I'm Dr. Jocelyn Duffy. I live in Nantucket. I've owned a home in Nantucket since 1997, and now further up in Nantucket. I'm a family physician, and I'm familiar with the lifestyle here in Nantucket, and I'm afraid it's deteriorating. Nantucket is a priceless island. To me, it's a priceless island because of its community. nowhere else do you see this great rapport between people here on this island. And I'm afraid that with greed and lack of long-term rentals, it's deteriorating. I go with facts. I like facts. I'm a physician. And these are facts, and I can cite you where these facts came from. In 2010 to now, Nantucket lost 600 full-time rentals. From 2019, the STRs went up from 676 to 2,440. That's 261% increase in STRs. That's from Process First. And the first one I meant to mention about the 600 rentals that were lost since 2010 is from the US Census. Since 2019, the town has approved $84 million for affordable housing through meetings and through meetings and through elections, the April elections. Okay, the STRs bring into the town a tax of $7 million. However, the town has supplied $84 million for affordable housing. If you lose the $7 million from the STR, it's made up by the town contribution of the $84 million. So I find, in my interpretation, the balance is money versus the fabric of society. When you're losing your full-time rentals for healthcare professionals like me, for teachers, for policemen, for public safety people, you're losing the fabric of Nantucket. We need these people to take care of us, right? You need me. You need everybody. And it's offset by this thirst for money. And people need money, I agree. You need to pay your bills, you need to eat, but there's a reasonable amount here. Those are the facts, okay? Now, these are my observations since I've been here. I have a girlfriend, Kathy, that lives in Nantucket. The house next door was owned year-round by a person who sold it to a corporation. They put up 3 buildings. They only had a septic for 3 bedrooms. They asked for a higher septic limit, and that was not allowed. The house has been advertised for 14 people at a time with a pool. Eventually, the Board of Health intervened and said a cease and desist rule on this house. It has not been enforced. My neighbor Kathy puts up with a lot of noise in the daytime from the use of the pool, and at night, the parents are singing. She is seriously considering moving off island because of this. My other girlfriend, Margaret, has a house. She lost her husband, put up a few other small houses, cottages, shall we say, and she rents in her house to people coming on STRs. A lot of them are maybe a weekend, they're a week. They're also hospital people that stay here for 6 months. She supplies the workers to this community, and also the people that come for weddings. That's great. I like it, the people that come on the weekends. That's a good situation. And under Article 2, she would be exempt from this because she's a homeowner and she's on site, so she can continue to rent. I agree, it limits the amount of STRs with Article 2, but if you're renting less STRs, less than 30 days, you can provide housing for the year-round community. This is a really unique place. I lived for 30 years north of Boston. I can honestly say only one neighbor came up to me in 30 years and said, "Hi, Jocelyn." I was in Stop and Shop today and 3 people addressed me. One lady came up to me and said, "I know you. Where did we meet?" And we figured it out. You're not going to get that elsewhere. I'm sorry. So Article 1 opens the gates to investor profit. not the people that are here, that are living here, that are supporting us, but to investors, to corporations. It ends up being a loss of community. We have a great community here. It's wonderful, okay? I don't know of that anywhere else, but you're gonna lose it. You're gonna lose the plumbers. For Pete's sakes, my husband's a physician, and he's doing the plumbing. We had a loss of water Christmas Eve a couple of years ago. I put my finger in the pipe, the volume expander. We couldn't get anybody. I understand that. A neighbor came down, shut the system down. We didn't get anyone till April. We had heat, okay? My husband learned to do plumbing. But an electrician, I don't know about. So there is a big loss of the fabric, of the people, of the workers that we need. So with Article 1 passing, it's going to be a loss of us. And it's going to be greed going out of Nantucket. I want the people here to be supported, to make money, to be able to pay their bills. Article 2 at least limits those STRs and provides more year-round housing for everyone so that we can stay here. We can communicate with everyone. My honest feeling right now is it brings up Robert Frost's poem, you know, the road not taken? I feel we're on this road that's just greedy and is trampled by everyone. And we need to see the good of us, the good place this is, and we need to get out of that mindset. It's like being in a forest with trees and we can't see what's going on. We need to step out and see and take a look of what's really happening. And I'm afraid that it's already happening, and we need to just put the brakes on this. And please vote for Article 2. It's small, but it's a step. It's a step for us to all stay here and take advantage of this wonderful island. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Brian, I'm going to go online real quick, and then I'll come back to you.
We have two hands up. You have Penny Herlihy.
Welcome, Penny.
I'm afraid you're all going to be disappointed.
Oh, it's Mike. Welcome, Mike. I think you're muted again, Mike.
How's that? Is that better?
Yes, great. We can hear you.
Okay, let me put I don't know where the camera is on this thing.
You don't have camera.
No camera needed, Mike. You can just speak, please.
Okay, that's great. Well, I've submitted a letter that basically asks that in preparing Article 2 for consideration by the voters, that we eliminate the verbiage that combines the day count when in cases like ours where you have two dwellings. I don't know if I would need to read all that, Dave, or not, but
If the lot contains.
I think we've all seen your letter, Mike.
okay.
Has everyone had an opportunity to read that? Yes, we've all seen it.
So for the voting public, we have two dwellings on our property. We've been either renting or as renters, or since 2000, we built property, which we bought in 1980, and built a house and a cottage on it, which was the model that we rented on for the 25, 30 years before that. And we've needed to rent both places flexibly, intermingled with our family usage during the season and the saddle seasons, in order to make expenses to break even on the property for the last 25 years. So this particular addition to the Article 2, where we are only allowed to cumulatively rent for 45 or 70 days for the season of the year. In an expanded definition of the season, adding the 2 weeks in June, is a killer for us. It legislates us off the island. And we don't think it's fair. And I don't know how many people are like us on the island. Dave, have we ever taken count of the two dwelling situations doing STRs?
We may have looked at the numbers in the work group, to be honest, but I don't recall. I don't think there's a ton, but I don't remember, to be honest, John.
Well, if there aren't many, why punish us? I mean, this is our dream. We built it for our family, and that's what we're doing, and we're running in the traditional sense. We do not, just to characterize this, we have a large lot. The houses are separated. There's plenty of there's parking for 10 vehicles on the property. We follow fairly rental.
Very rigorous.
I'm sorry, would you want to say something?
Yeah, I do. The alternative we were told is we'll rent both of them together. Well, we sleep in beds 20 between the two. And great, if we can get a multi-generation family to come in, good. But if it's 20 people, it's going to create a party scene, which is not anything we've talked to our neighbors than any of us want. So we would really like to be able to keep renting, but to rent them each separately.
Yeah, unless we get the multi-generational effect. We look for families. We don't have a pool. We follow the best practices and taking care of our lawn and observing practices for water quality. For God's sakes, we love Sacagawea Pond. We all think it's a tragedy when it gets all the algae blooms. We go back to the spotted turtle study for the Land Council, which is almost 45 years ago, and we live next to some nice conservation land. So we think we're in the right spirit, and we don't think that we should be proposing an article that punishes people like us. Now, if you're trying to stem something in the future and you think that it accomplishes that, then we would ask you to grandfather the existing situations. Of course, the flip side of grandfathering is that you stand in the way of our children ever bootstrapping their way onto Nantucket if you keep this thing in there. So we'd ask you to consider that and take a motion amongst the planning board members to consider striking that verbiage from Article 2 before you pass it on. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mike. Mr.
I
Bullington?
mean, I forgot what I was going to say. I mean, this is the problem, like the anecdotal stuff. So just let me respond to that. She said the Board of Health has been called. That's an enforcement issue. That is not a rental issue. It's not zoning. It has nothing to do with zoning. It's incredible that someone who just admitted to do illegal plumbing in their house is now complaining about someone else's house renting to other people. Like, I got mine and I want to do my illegal stuff, but if someone else does it, I mean, let's get them. My original point is, I know you're trying to solve a problem, Dave, and I get it. This is one guy that started this. This is one person. He was quoted in the paper. I'm going to throw $1 million at the problems in Nantucket. There are no problems. Yes, there are problems, but it is not a massive problem. We got our eyes closed. We're swinging at nothing. You know who traffic is? Traffic is me. Traffic is Jim. Traffic is Penny. Traffic is who biked here. 0 people biked here. 1 person biked here. We are all traffic. We are traffic. We are the problem. And when you say that $7 million comes from the short-term rentals and we allocated $84 million, where do you think the $84 million comes? It comes from my taxes. It doesn't come out of the short-term rental stuff. It comes for the fact that I do a certain amount of construction or pour foundations or build spec houses or rent real estate agents or take people charter fishing. That's where the income comes from. That's where our taxes pay for all of these bills. You know where this building was paid for? From our taxes. It wasn't paid from building seasonal housing or anything like that. We're swinging at a problem that does not exist. One guy, he said the quiet part out loud. I'm going to throw $1 million at that. Well, I'm not going to make $1 million for like the next 7 years. So it's really special to say that, especially like at a place he doesn't live. Like we need to just have our island back. That's what we need to have our island back. And admittedly, during COVID, was there a lot of really, really, really challenging rentals? There certainly was. But this island is back and everyone sees it. It's back to families. It's back to bigger families. There's no beer pong on the lawns anymore. I mean, there was 750 complaints to the short-term rent. Oh, no, sorry. There was 5. There was 5 complaints this year to the short-term rental. 5, not 6, not 9, not 100. 5. That's all there was is 5. And if we're going to go after this for 5 complaints, we're crazy. I understand that there are little bad apples in little areas of all that stuff, and there are tough renters. I had someone living in the house next to me for 5 years, year round, and they were loud and they played music, and you know what? They were there for 5 years. I know that one of the people in the lawsuit here, what would happen if someone rented for the whole summer instead of short term and they decided to have band practice out in their lawn for 2 months? There's no repercussion for that. You're stuck for 2 months. Noise is noise. There's all sets of rules and laws set up for all lights and noise and all that stuff. It's an enforcement issue. It's not a zoning issue. Let's get back to what zoning is. Zoning is not length of time. Zoning is not, you can do something for 11 days, but you can't do it for 35 days. If I own Norman's Garage and I want to rent out Norman's Garage, I can do automotive work in there. I can't run a restaurant. That's zoning. But the zoning board can't limit me like, oh, you can only rent 2 months a year. Because, there's a lot of traffic in and out of there at those times. That's not what zoning is. Zoning is for zoning. Like all these other problems are not zoning. This is all NIMBY, tea times, and restaurant reservations. We've seen it all. There's a lot of traffic, admittedly, and the traffic is us. That's the problem.
I just want to push back a little bit on you, Brian, is that, and I don't want to speak for the rest of my board here, but the problem we're trying to resolve is a zoning problem. That's why we've put forward an article to fix the zoning.
So then
The problem is that the voting public is having a hard time wrapping their heads around approving short-term rentals in zoning without some kind of regulation. Okay? I'm not saying, and that's all I'm saying. I'm not going to argue the rest of the things you're talking about.
I
What is
I
broken
agree.
is our zoning. Both of these articles will fix that. It is up to the community to decide what price they want to pay to fix that. And that's really the bottom line.
So in your article and in my article, there's all the laws that we have for enforcement. Noise, parking, occupancy. In your article, what is your enforcement? Are you going to hire a team of people to come and knock on a door that saw 6 people rolling a suitcase up a driveway and said, show me your lease and prove that you don't live here?
It will be enforced the same way the existing laws are enforced. And I think that people need to remember there's not going to be a secret police for short-term rentals. Regulations are put in place to deal with problem properties, okay? And when they become a problem, you use those regulations to fix that problem.
Okay.
Okay.
So let's just go back in 2015, before the verbiage was taken out of our zoning, all of this none of this would have happened because it all would have been legal, correct?
No, it's not identified in our zoning or permitted in our zoning. We have a
Not right
permissive.
now, it isn't.
We have a permissive zoning bylaw, and unless it is provided for in our zoning, it is not allowed.
But it was previously allowed in our zoning,
It has
correct?
never been in our use chart. It has never been defined in our zoning.
It might be helpful to have John Giorgio
Yes.
talk to
We
this.
didn't really answer the question the last time.
But we
it's
can,
the
but
judge
John,
that
John,
can
would
rule
you
that.
like to weigh in on this, please?
Judge's interpretation. Hey.
Good afternoon, everyone. So exactly what would you like me to weigh in on, Mr. Chair? What is the question?
Well, so the question is whether short-term rentals have ever been legal. Is that accurate, Brian, what you're asking?
Yes.
Yes. Have short-term rentals ever been legal on Nantucket?
So your zoning bylaw is fairly typical in that it says that uses have to be specifically allowed. And if they're not specifically allowed, they're deemed not to be allowed. So what Judge Vey found initially was that a short-term rental constitutes a commercial use. And so, and that is not allowed in residential districts. But he did indicate that it was possible, depending upon the facts, that they would be deemed an accessory use under your definition of accessory use. Now, he was not persuaded by the second trial that occurred in the Ward litigation to conclude that in that particular set of facts, it was an accessory use. So one of the things that Article 2 strives to do is to add language to the definition of accessory use, which, right now, currently in your bylaw, I'm just pulling it up here. It is separate structures, buildings, or uses which are subordinate and customarily incidental to the principal use. So that was the legal standard that was looked at in the Ward litigation. Article 2 proposes to add a short-term rental shall be deemed an accessory use if it complies with the requirements of Chapter 139, Section 7A of the use chart. And of course, that is what is also being amended in Article 2. One of the things that it's important to acknowledge is that in both Article 1 and Article 2, you have to be in full compliance with the general bylaw restrictions on short-term rentals in order for you to have the benefit of the right to continue to operate. And that general bylaw can be amended at any time at the September town meeting or in the future to deal with those kinds of restrictions in the general bylaw. So the question, if your question is, have short-term rentals ever been an allowed use? I would say yes, as long as that short-term rental meets the definition, the current definition of accessory use. And that really is the rub here. That's why Article 2, and for that matter, Article 1, are specifically putting short-term rentals in as either a principal use or an accessory use, which would do away with that ambiguity. And as you've indicated, Mr. Chair, that would presumably resolve the litigation that is currently pending. I also just wanted to correct the record. A previous speaker talked about corporate ownership. and how that's ruining the island, the corporate ownership of STRs. Well, I hope everybody is aware that that has been addressed once and for all in the general bylaw. Corporations are, and other kinds of investment companies are not allowed to short-term rent, period.
So same
Thank you,
question for long-term rentals. So long-term rentals are also illegal because they're not specifically, there's not specific language in our zoning that says you can rent 60, 70, 90 days, correct?
Mr. Chair, I think we should be very, very careful about making that statement. That was a factor that Judge Vey discussed in his decision, but that matter is up on appeal. And I think whether it's in your bylaw or not, the common understanding under zoning is that a residential use can be either ownership or a long-term rental at a minimum. And we certainly do not agree with that, the judges. If the judge was suggesting that long-term rentals are illegal on the island, we very much would disagree with that characterization. And hopefully that issue will either be resolved on November 4th, if Article 1 passes, or we will brief that and argue that at the appeals court.
Can I ask you a question about that?
Yes.
So I'm really glad you brought up the long-term rental question. I read through all of the ward decisions and responses and documents just to try to acquaint myself with, refresh my memory about all of the decisions and facts of the law. But I didn't see any discussion about long-term rental. So where, did I miss it? Where is the discussion? Did the judge speak to long-term rental at some point, and where was it and what was said?
Mr. Chair, so the judge dealt with short-term rentals in his first decision. In his second decision, he called into question whether renting of property is an allowed use on Nantucket. I don't believe that he addressed specifically long-term versus short-term rentals, but he was focused on the 2015 amendment to the bylaw, which essentially revised the took rental out of the definition of use. Is basically, I think that was his concern. I'm not at all sure that that was dispositive of his decision, but it is something that we would recommend going forward be addressed definitively. We can do it through the courts and hopefully prevail. But as I have said many, many times, you don't want to rely upon the vagaries of a court case or a particular judge or even the appeals court. You should solve this problem locally through a clear bylaw that can get a 2/3 vote.
So yes, rental was in there. He just admitted.
Well, but it wasn't.
And it was changed in
It was,
2015.
yes, in the,
Okay.
in the previous bylaw, but just to be clear, Judge Vey did not at any point say in his decisions that long-term rentals are potentially not legal. He just talked about rentals, and the context is short-term rentals. Am I wrong about that? I mean, I know, Mr. Giorgio, you're concerned about it, even though the general understanding is that a residential use includes whether you're there as a tenant on a long-term basis or you're there as an owner on a long-term basis. That's consistent with the residential use. But the judge was really dealing with short-term rentals.
I'm not going to characterize what Judge Ray was trying to communicate in that second decision. It's on appeal. We are going to vigorously defend the zoning board's decision, especially on remand and the determination that it was an accessory use. That is the issue. I'm not quite sure why he decided to address the question of the 2015 amendment. But I don't think we should get too much in the weeds in the litigation. And also, I don't think it's particularly appropriate to amend your bylaws to address one particular, trial court decision. I will say that his decision with respect to short-term rentals being a commercial use is pretty clear in what I would call Ward 1. And certainly either one of these articles addresses that. And Article 1 goes a little bit further by reinserting long-term rentals as an allowed principal use.
Thank you, John.
To my original question, the answer is yes. Rental was in our bylaw previously.
It was
Yes.
not,
He just said it.
The same answer happened 2 weeks ago.
yeah, no,
Still
it
not
was
really an
not,
answer.
it was, for one, short-term rental wasn't even a thing until the state made it a thing. And that wasn't a thing in 2015. For two.
just said
for-
rental.
For one, again, it needs to be identified, it needs to have a definition, and it needs to be placed in the use chart to be a legal use. And short-term rentals, none of those existed. Okay, I'm not fighting with you.
No, I'm just
Brian, I'm
saying,
just,
but-
that's really the facts, okay? And it's not because we took use out, didn't all of a sudden make this something.
If the word rental was left in there, there would be no court cases.
I don't believe that. It was still not defined and placed in our use chart.
Okay? I disagree with you, but
Mr.
if
Chair,
it was in there, there would be nothing to sue against. Because people are renting their house, whether it's 1 day, 1 hour, 1 month, 1 year, 15 years. It's rental.
Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Yes, John.
I think we're going down a rabbit hole here
Yep,
that none of you may be able to climb out of.
fair
You
enough.
have to read Ward 1. And Ward 1 said that a short-term rental is different in character than a long-term lease. Now, if Nantucket were located in the state of New Hampshire, their Supreme Court has said, no, a rental is a rental is a rental. It can be 1 day, 5 days, or a year. But you're not located in New Hampshire. You're in Massachusetts. And Judge Vay's decision in Ward 1 was quite clear. It's a commercial use unless it qualifies as an accessory residential use. And that was the whole point of the remand. So to say if you hadn't taken out rentals in 2015, there'd be no problem, I don't believe that's a fair and accurate statement, with all due respect.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Brian. I'm gonna, yeah. I'm
We
gonna
have
go,
Kathy Baird.
hi Kathy, welcome.
Hi, very quickly, just actually going back to the previous discussion where there was a woman that was citing the loss of homes from census data. And I just wanted to add other information from that same census data because I use it all the time. I know exactly where she got it and what it says. During that same 10-year time period where there were 600 houses lost to no longer available for rental year round, at that very same time, there were 839 new local homeowners. So in other words, there were 839 more homes that were owned and paid for, bought by locals. So the housing for renters was impacted negatively, but the housing for owning a home for locals went up significantly during that same time frame. And then also during that same 10 years, I think that the population of Nantucket increased by 40%. It was Nantucket's been a very, very fast growing community for a long time now. And during that same 10 years, there were 239 only, so there were 839 new locally owned homes built in that 10-year time period. There were only 239 seasonal homes, which is much lower than the rate of increase that it was. So they basically flipped. There were more year-round homes, way more year-round homes created than seasonal homes. So that's just the other part of that data that she was citing. And then I think just back to this previous discussion, I'll just throw this out there quickly. I think the fact that there was the definition that we're talking about was called used, and it used the word rental in it. And as Dave said, there was no such thing as a long or a short-term rental before 2019, when the state legislature defined a short-term rental as being the 31 days or less. So there would have been no reason to talk about long and short-term rental. They were not. There was no difference. It was just a rental's a rental. And that's why nobody really paid attention to it. So I think that's where it was. And then there was language that was in there that at the time nobody thought was important to put it in a use chart, so that it was just a definition, not in the use chart, which was a new concept of even having a use chart. That wasn't in the original zoning for the town. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jim Mondani. I'm speaking for myself and not as a member of the zoning board. I want to urge this board, as strange as it sounds, to not support its own warrant, its own article. And there are two reasons. One is a process. Until today, this is Dave Iverson's article. Read every piece of news on this, talk to everyone. It's Dave Iverson's article, not the planning board. And also, when I look at the article printed, it's not even the planning board. It's the select board for the planning board. So I don't know how any of this works from that standpoint. But if it is Dave, and you've done a great job, Dave, I don't know who the stakeholders are. I know for a fact you haven't talked to any zoning board members who have sat through both of these appeals and probably know more about this than anybody except our attorney. And I don't know anyone who these stakeholders are. I'm not even sure you use the plus department, who have degrees in this to create this. So you've had 7 years to do this, and all of a sudden you just come up with this. So I want to urge this board, if that's the case, you're not doing your job. You're letting one guy come up with this, and probably one guy behind him, or a couple guys, cement mixer guys, and you're not doing your job. It's irresponsible. It's arbitrary to just vote on something that you have not really worked on. And I want you to think about that. In terms of the actual article, I also think it's arbitrary. I mean, I know we talked about the lease stuff, but the number of days, we don't have any zoning. I'm not aware of any zoning in this state that's governed by time. There's no time dimension to this. And we just talked about it in the context of long-term, short-term. And that's one of the reasons why I think people are confused about this, because there is no defined thing. The judge came up with his number. I guess he is into creating zoning laws, because that's what he did. He created it for us. He said 31 days. He could have said 25. So that's arbitrary. And then the number that you've come up with, the number of weeks and all, what's the basis for that? You guys are going to vote for something that you really have no basis. And we've discussed it here with the facts, and you could drive a truck through a lot of this stuff. So I don't understand why you're putting this forward. Maybe 7 years ago, yeah, but it's dubious to come up with this when the group came up with when Mr. Borgeson came up with his article. And his article is simple, and having been involved indirectly with the litigation, it fixes the problem. That judge almost allowed us to deem it, or he almost deemed it an accessory use. He said it was subordinate. He said it was customary. Passed that test. And then he came up with some, bull crap about incidental, where he almost said it wasn't incidental enough, which is crazy. Usually usually what's being covered is something that's so egregious, it's not even close to incidental. So I'm not even sure what he's doing. We could have just eliminated the word incidental, and based on that case, they're an accessory use and solved the problem. But that's for Mr. Giorgio to pursue. But he was pretty close doing it. So there's no reason for us to come up with our arbitrary numbers. Just like Mr. Borgeson said, if Nantucket Auto Body wanted to rent that thing out to do auto body, assuming that it's allowed, he could do it. You can't say if he rents it, that changes the use. It's just as arbitrary. Short-term rental is a new term for something that's always been done. And there's no reason to go through and have the ZBA start to figure out what zoning, what is short-term and what isn't. Because it's the reason why we keep going around and around. No one in that town meeting knows and is confused about a lease is not a lease, is not a lease. And that's the confusing part. But Mr. Borgeson's article gets there and solves the problem. Finally, with regard to your article, you do have, it's not being enforced the same way everything else is in place. You again have a time frame in there. And you can imagine where this is going to go. And if you start showing up at people's door and saying that was 29 days, not 31, that's a new type of enforcement. Who's going to do it? The building inspector, which I'm not even sure you've talked to the building inspector. He's the one who's made this decision on our behalf, and we supported him. Does he have enough to go on here? These cases are bubbling up in the context of short-term rental, where a municipality is asking for more information. You're starting to get into Fourth Amendment rights and an expectation of privacy. I mean, at what point, that's not your family member? Are you going to go after them to figure out that that's not their family? And you can imagine where this could go. So why open yourself up for that? Just allow what we've always been allowed, and maybe let it go through the courts, and we'll just comport with whatever the courts say. The other towns are all holding back, and there's no reason for us to jump ahead and make these big changes. Thanks.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I'd just like to make a comment on where the gentleman started with his comments, which is, this is Dave Iverson's article. I'd just like to say for the record that Dave and Tom Dixon spent 3 months very stressfully talking to as many stakeholders as they could. And yes, it is a planning board article. Yes, Dave is the chair. But this represents 3 months of listening, massaging, listening again, and bringing together a very disparate group of people with something that, as the chair has explained before, is an option to Article 1. And I, for one, think we owe Tom and yourself a debt of gratitude for putting so much personal time and stress suffering stress into this, for doing it. Because without that, we would not be sitting here today talking about two options. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. I'd also like to push back that this is our decision as a planning board. This is not our decision as a planning board. This is the community's decision. Okay, we have multiple times put forward articles with positive recommendations that have been slaughtered at town meeting. Not necessarily just STRs, but other ones. This is a community decision, and what I worked hard for, what Tom worked hard for, with all the people that I've met over the past 3 months have worked hard for, is to give this community an option and not have to just vote for one article, vote it up or vote it down. Because clearly we've seen in many town meetings that there's a large portion of our community that does not want full codification for one reason or another. But this is a community decision. We as a community at town meeting need to decide what we are comfortable with when we say short-term rentals are okay. And that's what this is about. This isn't about what this is about what the community feels. So, Mr. Frame.
My name is Rob Frame. I live at Cisco Beach. I've been a school teacher here in Nantucket for 30 years. I've been a real estate broker here additionally for 30 years. Myself, my family, and many of the members of families in Cisco are not going to vote for Article 1 or Article 2. Little are on Article 2. We might come around on that. And Dave, I'm not going to whack you, you know. I've served on many, many committees over the years, and I really want to thank the people who are serving on this committee because you do it as volunteers. But to get to it real quickly here, I read an article in the Nantucket Current, and it was written by a real estate broker, and he stated in his letter that 49 days of peak season rental will not cover the expenses of owning his home. I don't know where his home is, but it must be a pretty grand home. I did a little math, and I said of the 7 weeks that make up that time frame during the months, the peak months, I would guess, there's a lot of brokers here, that $10,000 a week is kind of the median. There's much more expensive ones and less expensive ones. They're more expensive if you got a pool. So 7 weeks times 10,000 is $70,000. The additional 3 weeks, that might cover Christmas stroll. It might cover the wine festival, might cover the film festival. Let's bring it down and say $7,500 a week. That would come out to $23,000. So a total of $93,000. So I know a lot of folks have people taking care of the landscape, people taking care of cleaning in the windows, people taking care of cleaning the house, people taking care of laundry, and the list goes on. And the taxes, which are very reasonable here on Nantucket. I came from New Jersey, and you want to talk about taxes, those were taxes. So I think $93,000 is a pretty inflated number to cover the expense of owning a house here on Nantucket, expenses, all right? So my proposal, and the folks that neighbors out in Cisco, we'd like to see you make amendment to Article 2 and bring the number down during the peak season to 30 days and 20 days for the rest of the year. So it total comes out to 50 days instead of 70 days. That would make more sense to us. To go back quickly, why do people buy homes on Nantucket? Because Nantucket's a jewel. It's different than a lot of other resort communities. And, some of them buy it because of it's a jewel. And they want to be here during the summer. They want their families to grow up here. It's an experience that my neighbors, who are summer people, are very, very grateful for. Then there are other people who, are concerned about the living costs here, so they rent for 2 weeks, or maybe they'll even rent for 4 weeks. But that's usually the limit of what is reasonable in our opinion. So if you would like our support on Article 2, I would ask that you think about amending the times. Drop it down, 30 days, peak season, 50 days total. I think that's very reasonable. I thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Campbell?
Yeah, good evening, Campbell Sutton. I, like Brian, sort of forgot what I got up here to say. But first of all, I wanted to thank you guys for putting this together. I know it was really on a short time frame based on the special town meeting that you saw coming down the line. So I really appreciate the time that you've put into it. I think it does, as Dave was saying, I think it does look at the community as a community versus the money as a money piece. And just one thing that I found very interesting in the NARAB report, well, a couple things, but anyway, one is that about 82% of short-term rentals on Nantucket are owned by non-voters. So to me, that's where we get into this sort of rub, right? Because there's only, I think, let me put my glasses on. Yeah, so there's 17 to 18% of voting public that owns short-term rentals. And I would imagine a number of those would be covered under the hosted stay, which is offered in Article 2. I think it's a really nice piece. One thing I would mention, however, I'm not going to quibble over the 49 days, but I think in that NARAB report, there were low rentals, but still rentals in like January, February, March. And I started wondering, are those workmen that are coming over to do a sewer project or work on the school, or, you know what I mean? Like they may be people we want to have. So to that, I think the 21 days is a little difficult in order to facilitate all the variety of people, not just the summer people, but we also need housing for those who come for short term. I guess I have to be honest, I've never voted for Article 1, ever. And it has been around for quite a bit. And one of the reasons is because I think the short-term rental issue is not just about traffic, right? For me, the short-term rental issue is about infrastructure. It's about water resources. It's about power use. I know, Nat, you're going to just go through the roof on that. But
I'm trying to keep
him down here. We're trying to keep him down.
I appreciate that. But also the
I've got
pressure.
a sharp stick.
Also the pressure on the sewer system. I mean, I think we have some underlying issues where our uses outpace where we actually exist in our ability to absorb more and more and more of them. So another piece, anecdotally, I was chatting with someone, and they were saying a few years ago they were trying to buy a house downtown, and they wanted to buy it as a summer home. And they were in a bidding war with another couple who were buying it in order to short-term rent it. And because that was their goal, going to be their use, they were willing to pay a much higher price than someone that was going to be using it just as a summer, home, okay? And I think that anecdotal piece tells me that there is an element of short-term rental pressure that increases the value of our homes. And I think that piece, to me, is concerning because it keeps driving the price of a home up and up and up and up. And at some point, even our taxes aren't going to be able to cover everybody that we need year-round on the island. But so that's just sort of anecdotal. But I believe that short-term rentals are considered problematic globally because they really are. Okay, it's not just Nantucket, it's not just the businesses here. Someone mentioned that Florence, Italy has capped their short-term rentals to 20,000 because of the destructive nature that the expansion is having. They have the same kind of thing like in Madrid or Toronto, so it is an issue, and I don't think we should just treat it like it's only happening to us and not anyone else. So I want to thank you for your time. I want to thank you for your hosted stay. I'm not really sure what an operator is and why we need to have that definition in there. But I don't want to take up any more valuable time.
And I'll
Thanks.
venture to answer the operator piece. In an effort to lessen our exposure to challenge from the Commerce Clause, we needed to have a way that someone other than the owner could be in place for the hosted stay. And that's where the operator comes from.
I wanted to point out one more thing, because I did watch the September 24th meeting. This Article 2 also restricts the ability for someone to rent a place for 6 months and then short-term rent it out. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, great, because I think that's one of the issues people are concerned about. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to go, Ed's been up there for a while, so I'm going to go to Ed, and then I'm going to come back to Mr. Cohen.
Thank you, Dave. Edward Sanford. I want to see if we can find a little bit of common ground here, and I'll ask a couple of questions. So I guess my first one is, if Article 2 passes through this special town meeting, in your opinion, does that end Acknell's funded lawsuits that have been going on against the town for the last 4 years? Does that effectively put an end to their legal action?
I'm going to have John answer that. In my opinion, it would, because now it's a legal use.
Okay.
But I'm going to let town council address that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think both Articles 1 and 2, and I think you mentioned this early on, address the legal issues that are present, at least in the Ward litigation, and likely other legal challenges that might come down, come down the pike. So I think either one of them is going to, you can never predict what's going to happen in litigation, but I would imagine, in my view, it would moot at least the current litigation if either Article 1 or Article 2 passed.
So I'll take that as a yes. So the next question, if Article 1 passes and Article 2 does not, does the passage of Article 1 prevent me, well, I'm not a registered voter anymore. I admit I don't live here year-round anymore. But does that prevent any registered voter of the town of Nantucket from bringing a warrant article to the 2026 town meeting that would further restrict short-term rentals in any manner? Could they be able to do that, or does?
Yeah, I think Article 1 leaves the ability open through a general bylaw to continue to restrict. I think it may be a little more challenging if it passes, but it's definitely an option.
Well, I'm not sure I disagree with the challenging aspect, but my point is, Article 1 is not a stop. It basically puts an end to the ACNAL-funded lawsuits, which have been looming over this island with creating massive uncertainty and discomfort, not only economically, but as Brian mentioned earlier, it's literally pitting neighbor against neighbor. So we put an end to that. But citizens can move forward and try to regulate short-term rentals as they see fit, if they can get the votes at town meeting, which for zoning has been quite difficult to do. On a general bylaw with only 50% of the vote needed, might be quite easy, quite a bit more accessible. Okay, so
That's more than fair. I mean,
All right.
listen, you've heard me argue at town meeting multiple times that regulating through a general bylaw is probably the preferred way, right?
Right.
But I think what we've run up against is a large part of our community that is not comfortable with that.
Can I interject something there?
Yeah.
I would say a third of the community is not comfortable with that.
Depending on what
I've
town
got-
meeting you're at.
I've got the number right here.
Yeah, no.
Of the 2025 town meeting where Article 66 got nearly 60% of the vote. Okay, got a good majority of the vote. And the other three articles that followed, which were restrictive short-term rental articles, the best one got a third of the vote. Now, these are zoning articles. It went a third, 24 and 14%. So it's pretty clear that we are stalemated to a degree, but it's also clear, especially if you go back to 2024, Steve Cohen's article got 63% of the vote, and that was full codification. So in a way, the voters at town meeting are saying, we want to put an end to this. They just don't have that magic 2/3. They've got 63%, and under our rules, that doesn't pass. But you can't say that the will of the people is to do something different when the opposite is getting far, far fewer votes. So I would predict, assuming you put Article 2 forward at the special town meeting, it's not going to pass. It's way too restrictive. And the reason it's too restrictive is because you haven't had the time to study I know you're not an economic board, but zoning laws have economic impacts. And you haven't had time to study what limiting an owner to 49 days in peak season, and worse, limiting them to 21 days of rental out of the other 287 days of the year, what that's going to do to the island community. As Brian pointed out, he's got a fishing charter tomorrow. My guess is those people might be staying in a house for less than a week. If some homeowner is now restricted under Article 2, they're going to say, great, well, we're allowed to rent for less than a week in October, but we're not going to use up one of our precious 21 days way off season, so you can pay us the on-season rate. All of a sudden, boom. It's just as expensive to be here in October as it is in July. And I would argue that human nature being what it is, a lot of people are going to say, well, we're not going to come anymore. Because basically you're pricing a huge segment of the visitor population out of the market. So I'm just throwing out one issue. And I think I've sent a bunch of questions to you folks. You really have to consider what is going to happen if you're going to make these fairly significant restrictions. I would agree that seven weeks in the summer is probably what most homeowners are doing. You know, I'm not going to talk about the very small subset of investor owners, and there are people like that on the island. They don't drive the short-term rental market. They're a very small segment of that market. And sure, they're gonna be hurt. I can guarantee you they're not going to turn around and take their $4 or $5 million valued property because they can't do the rental business they do anymore. They're not going to turn around and rent it year round to a school teacher. I'll lay my bottom dollar on that.
That's, I mean,
Well,
we know that.
Well, you
we
and I
talked
might know
about
it, but
that,
that's the
like it's-
inference. We heard
yeah.
it just earlier. Oh, short-term rentals are stealing affordable year-round housing opportunities from people. That is not true. Norm Levinson's houses, they all sold for over $4 million a piece. Do you think a school teacher or even a two working adult family, year-round family could buy a $4 million house? No. Do you think Norm Levinson would say, oh, geez, I've sort of been hounded out of business. I'll rent, I'll take a financial bath and rent my $4 million house for $5,000 a month, which is $5 to $6 grand a month. And have, they're not going to do that. So you have to disconnect the year-round affordability problem from short-term rentals. They're two different issues entirely. All right.
Don't disagree with you.
Okay, so really what the responsible thing to do, the leaders of the town, the select board, you guys, is to put an end to Acknell's lawsuits. And the best way to do that, without any doubt or any change going into the near future, is to put forth Article 1 and lay Article 2 on the table. And you can you've got 4 or 5 months to come up with as many restrictions as you think you can get through town meeting and do it in 2026. But at a minimum, the people that depend on short-term rentals, depend on that summer economy, no longer have to worry that if we don't succeed in 4 weeks, that Peter calls up his attorney, says, call that judge up and tell him to enforce his ruling. And then what happens? You really don't want to know what happens. Every short-term lease that's been written, and they're writing them every day now, this is the time of the year, could very well be illegal. And is that the image we want to present to the world?
But with all due respect, you have Article 1. It is on the warrant.
I realize.
So I don't understand what this great fear of Article 2 is. Lay it aside. Don't let it.
Because it's an economic unknown, complete economic unknown. And I
seems to be
realize you don't deal with economics, but I think in the back of your mind, you should as a planning board, because it's the Planning and Economic Development Commission that you serve under.
Well,
So
no,
it's,
no.
so it's really scary to me when I look through, and you're not going to have any less car traffic. You're not going to get any more affordable houses. We're building 100, 150 new homes a year. Most of them probably seasonal, most of them very sophisticated. They require services. And that's why in March, if you go down Old South Road at 7:30 in the morning, the traffic's backed all the way up to Valero's at the Rotary.
I'm not arguing any of this
I
with
know.
you. I think just really, so what you suggest is that we put forward Article 1 and we ignore other people in our community that don't agree with it.
I'm not suggesting that at all. I said other people who want to move forward and try to further restrict the short-term rental activity on Nantucket has every ability to do so under considered articles where people, the Finance Committee, you folks, we can all sit down and try to determine what those impacts to the community are.
The general bylaws we wouldn't see. They wouldn't come before us.
Well, if somebody proposes a general bylaw, the Finance Committee is going to see it.
Yeah.
And I just, so I appreciate your time.
And listen, I'm not being disrespectful, you know that.
Oh, I know, no,
okay.
we just, we have a disagreement here, obviously. But
Yeah,
I just think that contrary to what you just heard, Article 2 is pretty extreme, and you don't know what the impact is going to be. And if you, what my fear is basically you end the visiting season, it goes from June 15th to August 31st, and that's the end of it.
We have to remember.
And businesses that survive on those vapors of off-season business are going to be in big trouble.
I mean, if NARAB's data is accurate, 3 out of every 4 properties rent for less than 52 days a year.
So why restrict them?
Why worry about them being restricted?
Because you don't know ultimately what a restriction is going to do. Well, the last thing I'll say, and I'll leave you alone. The only data that is available to determine what's going on in Nantucket is held by the State Department of Revenue. Since July 1st, 2019, they have been collecting taxes from every house that's rented short-term on Nantucket. They know the street address, and they know if they've collected taxes on that property, and they know if that property is filed for a 2-week exemption. They have the data. The public can't get that. Now, I would hope, since this is such a huge issue for the town of Nantucket, that you or the select board can bring some gravitas to that problem and have the Department of Revenue release that information in some, closeted sense. So you don't put in street addresses, but you need to know numbers. And we don't have them. I mean, the numbers I've heard tonight are crazy. There were far more than 600 rental houses here in 2019. We haven't tripled or quadrupled the number of rental houses in 5 years. It just hasn't happened. I don't know where these figures come from.
No, I wouldn't disagree. I
So-
mean, now we have a pretty good track record with the registration and.
Well,
with-
you do,
with
but
prior numbers. But yeah, no,
as
it's
Hillary pointed out, if you rent for 2 weeks, you don't have to register.
It's
There are
insanely
people that aren't
complex.
registering. I think most people are going to pay their state taxes because that gets into scary things if
Yeah.
you get caught not doing it.
Yeah.
So that's where that information is, and that's where the town needs to go to get the data so you can make a concerted
We got
decision.
that data at the work group, and I wouldn't say it gave us clarity.
Well, give it to me, all right? Okay. I'll come back with some
Fair enough.
thoughts on it. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Edward. I'm going to go to Steve Cohen.
We have Stephen Cohen and Kathy Baird's had her hand raised for a good
Okay,
while too.
Stephen hasn't spoken yet,
Yep.
so I'm going to go to Stephen, and then we'll go to Kathy.
Hello?
Hi, Stephen, we can hear you. Welcome.
Well, thank you. I appreciate everything the board is doing. I appreciate that you are trying to find some way to move forward here. I have one observation I'd like to make, and then I have some technical points on the Article 2 I'd like to make. The observation I'd like to make is that the 2 biggest reasons for short-term rental regulation are total baloney and have no basis, so why are we regulating them? And by that, specifically, I mean, in my experience as a real estate attorney on Nantucket, and by the way, I'm not representing anyone here, the biggest drivers of housing prices are, the first biggest driver is seasonal rentals, not investment property rentals, seasonal summer rentals. And the second biggest driver of lower end properties is workforce and employee housing. It is not year-round housing, and it is not short-term rentals. So we're not going to ever address the availability of year-round housing through the short-term rental regulation, because that's not what drives the problem. My second observation is that when I hear about all these noisy neighbors and disturbances by people coming and going and chair turnovers, all I can think is I'm next, because I will tell you, I am the worst possible neighbor. I have 2 dogs. I have a pool. I have a fire pit. I like to have cocktail parties with my friends. You people know me. I never shut up. You give me some bourbon in my fire pit, and I'm the worst neighbor out there. We like to go to the beach. We like to have guests. We're packing up the car all the time. My teenage daughter and her friends are noisier than my wife and I and our friends. Like, year-round people make the same disturbances as short-term rental, and there's no difference. And anybody who doesn't think so should come live next to me. We have a very nice time in my house, and I hope to get back there soon. That's a different story. My second thing, just a couple of technical points in Article 2. The first thing is, if you're going to propose Article 2, I think it should start in 2027, because most of the leases for 2026 have already been signed. And to place a regulation that starts in 2026 with all these leases in place would be remarkably complicated and unfair. So one thing for you to consider is adding a clause that it would start in 2027. My next point is that the limitations on the number of turnovers and the limitations on the number of days are a reasonable regulation as a concept, okay? But both of them are too tight. The limitation on 7 weeks in the 11-week period that is allowed is too small. I think it should either be 7 weeks during a 9-week summer and drop the 2 weeks in June, or it should be 9 weeks during the 11 weeks. You're just cutting it too tight with that 7 weeks during an 11-week period. But what's really killer and much worse is only allowing for 3 weeks for the entire shoulder season on both ends. That means Daffodil Festival, Wine Festival, Comedy Festival, summer, spring wedding season, fall wedding season, stroll, hunting season, Christmas, Thanksgiving, all these times you're only, you're talking about like 6 months of the year where you can only have 3 weeks of rental. Our community wants all of these events and loves, find me one person who doesn't like daffodil or stroll or all these other things that people come here for. And those are what enable most people to have the economic viability that they wouldn't have. And it just doesn't make any sense to me to limit the 3 weeks during the both shoulder seasons total. So I would highly recommend that the board think, if you want to restrict the number of turnovers and the number of days and the number of weeks, that's fine, but it should reflect something more reasonable, especially in the shoulder season. The last point I'd like to make is that as much as I appreciate that both sides need to be taken into account here, we should look at where Act Now is coming from. And if you really want to know, what you should do is read their white paper where they put it out there. Act Now has a white paper that came out years ago that says that the problem with Nantucket is Nantucketers. And by that I mean they say that the problem with all these people is that it creates all these people that need to service them. When you have all these summer people visiting, seasonal people and short-term rental people, then you need people to service them. And that's what causes all the infrastructure problems, all the traffic, all the mishigas that they complain about. So their problem with Nantucket is that there are too many Nantucketers here making a living servicing people. And that, I think, is shameful. And the idea that we are accommodating that is not something that I believe in. We should limit short-term rentals and regulate them in some way, but not because we need to limit enough summer people so that we need less year-round people here servicing them. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. And I'm going to go to Kathy Baird online.
Kathy, you there?
Kathy, you had just put your hand down. You should be
I'm
able-
sorry, I clicked the wrong button. I'm here. Sorry.
Okay.
So just 2 things. Looking at the NAREB data that was already cited and looking at the averages. So the averages look like it's not that much different than what's being proposed in Article 2. So for example, 49 days, and then somebody said, well, Dave, I think, said that really the average is 52. So the average actually is pretty much in line, but that also means that there are people who rent for 70 and people who rent for 20, and you're only punishing, if you will, the people that rent more than that because that's their business model. So just if we're already at the average, that's the question: why have restrictions? And then on the 7-day, I wanted to bring something up about the 7-day minimum during the summer. And that is cited, I think, in a letter to the editor, as well as it was mentioned here tonight, as having that would help with conservation of resources. So my question is exactly how would that do that? If, for example, the second most popular rental period, according to the NAREB data, is 3-day rentals. If you wanted to do 7 3-day rentals in that summer, so you have 7 leases, but they're not a minimum of 7 days, they're less. How is that causing more resource usage? It's less water. These people don't bring cars. They're only there for 3 days, which means that your house is quiet the other 4. That to me doesn't make any sense as why somebody would want a 7-day minimum. That makes that impossible. You've got to run them back to back. So that's one point I wanted to throw out there. And then I think on the other part, when we're talking about enforcement and does Article 2 stop the lawsuits, as was questioned before, I think that perhaps it's true to say that the existing lawsuits would be stopped, but all I can see is coming forward is an enforcement and a legal issue if a neighbor looks over and says, I think that they rented for 3 days instead of a full week, and makes that challenge or makes that lawsuit. There's so many different ways where you really don't know the answer. You'd have to challenge it in court that your neighbor is not following the rules. And I don't think that acrimony and that neighbor versus neighbor thing would stop. It would just be different. But it would be still leaving people open for being challenged or being sued, whereas the Article 1 wouldn't. So those are the 2 things I wanted to say. And also, just so anybody who wants to know, the agenda packet for the FinCom meeting tomorrow is already out and posted, and that has a financial impact analysis prepared by the finance director, Brian Turbot, in there, looking at the revenue impact to the town.
Thank you, Kathy. Is that it?
Yep.
Okay, sorry. I'm going to go to Amy and then to Matt Peel. Is that okay? Okay.
Amy Eldridge. I guess I'm curious as to who the stakeholders were that you guys have spoke to in the community. I mean, I've talked to, like I said earlier, many house cleaners. Nobody came and talked to us. Did you guys go to Rodriguez Cleaning? Who were the stakeholders? The people that are actually boots on the ground doing the work that this is going to affect. And my next question is, the town put out a really nice survey getting input on our island home. It would be nice to see if you guys could do some kind of survey, table this till April, take some more input, maybe make some adjustments. I'm not saying this Article 2 is horrendous, but it definitely needs some work. It's just too restrictive. But this all happened in such a short amount of time, and I understand that the filing and getting something together and getting it ready and following all the state requirements for getting the town meeting together and opening it to the public and all that stuff has to happen in a certain time frame. But if we tabled Article 2 till 26, and you guys put out some kind of survey and got some community feedback, I mean, they're doing it with the Our Island Home and get maybe a better grasp so that people like me who wasn't considered a stakeholder could put in their opinions as a stakeholder. I am very vested in my income that comes from exactly what we're trying to throttle, but it would be nice if you guys could do some kind of a survey and get information from more people so you understand the demographic that you're really affecting. And I understand there's people in the community that want this, but you also didn't speak to a lot of people who do need this. So, my hope is that maybe you guys can do a survey like the town administration did for the island home that's actually out now for people to take, so that you guys get a better understanding for those that can't come to these meetings or can't make town meeting, but because of the work situation, that could put their input in and you could hear all the voices, because I feel like you're not hearing all the voices. A lot of the stakeholders are people who are associated with Act Now's board. And I just think that's really sad. Thank you.
I push back that the stakeholders that I spoke to were part of Act Now's board. I mean, yes, I did speak to Act Now members, but I also spoke to some Neighborhood First members. I spoke to quite a few real estate agents. I spoke to Mr. Hurley in person, the Bidonis in person. I've spoken to a number of people. Again, people that don't want restrictions have Article 1 available to them. We're not stealing that from you. Everybody here has an option to vote how they see fit.
I understand what you're saying, and I appreciate that, but you left out a huge demographic of year-round workforce employees. And that's a huge demographic. Who in the,
Favor full codification.
I understand that, but then also like the restrictions on too is just, I don't know.
And I
Thank you.
appreciate that. I'm not like.
No,
You know, you've heard me fight for something similar to Article 1 for many years, right? But a warrant article is no good if it can't pass. It doesn't serve our community. At this point, it's either one of these two pass, or we live with Judge Bay's ruling until we pass something. And I don't think any of us want to live with Judge Bay's ruling.
Thank you.
That,
No, I'm keeping it all in, Dave. At some point, though, I'm not, but not yet.
Hi, my name is Nancy Bean. I'm the owner of Nantucket Wine and Food Festival. And I can just say I do not envy all of you this task of trying to bring together all of these really important and passionate feelings on all sides of this. I know it's a really an enormous challenge. I come from a kind of unique position in that the festival is a shoulder season event, and it always has been, and it represents the continuation of that important high season time. It represents a lot of commerce. It represents, the island opening and restaurants and retailers and inns and so many different organizations that sort of come alive in the shoulder season, similar to all of the weddings that happen and that must be kind of kept, in that springtime and in the fall time. But the shoulder season is precious and really vital to the commerce on the island. And we've seen from the pandemic, but also in general, how our beautiful island that is amazing and unbelievably too busy in the high season, what happens during that extended time. So the only piece that I just wanted to chat about, we rent so many houses for short-term rental during WineFest. So many, whether it's guests that are coming that do that, whether it's winemakers and importers, distributors, chefs, attendees, it's just so many. I don't know the exact data. I know how many we're responsible for renting, but I'm sure it's data that we can gather and collect, but it represents a lot. And, Wine Festival is one important weekend, but as was mentioned earlier, there's all of the weddings, there's Stroll, there's Thanksgiving, there's so much else that goes on in shoulder season. And if there's only 21 days where people can rent their home out, the chances of there actually being enough housing available for WineFest is just one of them, but all of these others, it's really, really slim. If people are going to do it on the up and up and rent it out the way that they should, I think that restriction seems curious to me. And I'd say that not just selfishly for my event and our needs or the attendees, but I think that it's also precious income to a lot of people where they're, maybe they're here in high season, I don't know, or they rent a certain amount, but they rely on this in order to be able to travel and do other things or send their kid to college, or I don't know. But I think the restriction, I understand about regulation, and I very much understand it, and I think it's appropriate. I think the shoulder season number of days is far too tight. I think it'll affect, and then talking about the economic impact, you think about the caterers that are doing these weddings, and you think about the transportation companies and the flower companies and the rental company and so on and so on and so on. There's going to be fewer. If you can't get houses and you can't rent and the guests don't have somewhere to stay, there's going to be fewer weddings, and that will have an economic impact. It doesn't have anything to do with the traffic and high season. It has to do with that precious, lovely time in the spring and the fall. So that was all I wanted to say.
Mr. Chair. Your microphone.
Thank you. Caroline?
Thank you. Caroline Baltzer. Attorney Cohen mentioned the white paper by Act Now and referenced the importance to this discussion of looking at it. I haven't read that for a while, but I do recall that Hillary Rayport told me during one of the short-term rental work
I
group-
did not write that white
Hey,
paper.
hey, hold on. Time out. Let's focus on the two warrant articles in front of us,
That
please.
is what I am trying to do.
Caroline,
in
and
my
I don't
question.
think by pointing fingers, we're doing that.
I am not pointing
Okay,
a finger.
please.
I have a question for the chair
Okay.
about that.
Okay.
Because obviously, since I heard her say that she was paid to write that in a group where I was present, and I was interested in it at the time and curious, I remembered that. And I am now even more interested in it because she's sitting on this board. And if Attorney Cohen is saying that it should be of interest, I would like your comments on how that may have affected this article that the planning board is sponsoring. Thank you.
Could I respond to that, Mr. Chair?
Can you give me one
Yeah,
second?
sure.
And you can definitely respond.
you.
I don't see how that paper is relevant here. Even though people would like to call this an Act Now article, it is not an Act Now article. And I think that that's an unfair question. And if Ms. Rayport would like to address it, she's welcome
Sure.
to, but I would like you to keep it
Yeah,
short and
I'll-
sweet, please.
I'll just say what I already said, which is that Ms. Balser has said that I've written this white paper. It came up when I applied for boards. It's come up on social media. I think that white paper was written by Audra Parker, and I had absolutely nothing to do with it. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. Ma'am?
Hi, Laura
Oh,
Hanson.
well, I didn't even recognize you, I'm sorry.
Thanks all for your time. One thing I just wanted to bring up about expenses of owning a home on Nantucket. My high school guidance counselor, Mr. Frame, actually discussed some. The expenses he mentioned certainly are legitimate, but I think what wasn't mentioned was a mortgage. And if you're getting a home for $2 million right now, which you would be hard pressed to find, at 6.35, you're looking at a 5-figure a month mortgage. So respectfully, that's why sometimes people short-term rent. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
We've had Matt Peel's hand online, just so
Oh,
you're aware.
My fault, I should have told you that. Sorry.
Vice Chair.
Sorry.
I do, but you're right here. Matt, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm trying to conjure up my best Nat Lowell sigh for you guys.
I have only sighed like twice. That's pretty good.
That is.
As one of those stakeholders that met with Dave and Tom, I obviously I'm in support of this article, but I get what Dave was trying to do with this article, with the days and the use and trying to tone down some of the intense use during the peak season. But we're hearing a lot of people get up here and talk about they're concerned with the restrictions in this article. Well, this article is assuming that people are, the owners of these properties are using these properties in the summertime. And right now, everybody that's getting up is saying that, well, you only get so many days, so many days. So who's using these properties if you're so limited then? In the same breath, these same people are getting up here and saying, it's just not feasible. It's not financially feasible, but it doesn't sound like these owners are using these properties at all. And they want to rent them all during the summer and then only have a little bit of time in the shoulder season. I think Dave's article is under the assumption that you're going to have an owner that's going to use it for a month or 2 weeks or a week, even a week in the summertime. But it doesn't sound that way from a lot of these people's concerns, which makes me believe that these are corporate or not, not corporate, but commercial investments, not just somebody's home that they're trying to make some extra earning off of. And so that's just one of my observations. And again, I want to really support David on what he said. This is not an Act Now article. So as somebody who's, last year, Peter went after me for my article. This is just because Dave's getting supported on this article from Act Now. I think Act Now is matured and understood that they have to change, that they have to make, something different. They have to adjust the way that they look at things. And I believe that they've done that by supporting this and not bringing their own article and not muddying up the waters. That's the Act Now support. This is not an Act Now written article at all. And I commend Dave for, taking this on and doing bringing this article and doing the research. He met with quite a few people. I sat myself and Charity sat with him for over 2 hours and discussed every different angle and all of our concerns for Nantucket Neighborhoods First. And, it's just worrisome what people are saying that, this has nothing to do with Act Now. This is it's completely separate. And, this is disappointing that, again, we could point the finger the other way at Nantucket Together and Article 1. It's the same thing over and over and over and over again. And, if one side's not changing or budging, I think Article 1 shows that. So thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Matt. I'm not sure who was at the mic first. Charity.
Well, I guess we've been called out as a stakeholder. I'll tell you a story. I was on the ferry coming home with my dog because my groomer lost her long-term rental to short-term, and so now every 6 weeks I have to go over to Hyannis to have my dog groomed. And so I go with a friend, and the two of us were sitting there, and I went up to the bar to get an adult beverage, and this big man came up behind me, and it was Dave Iverson.
Big man.
And I didn't know what to think. And I sort of looked, and he said, "Do you have a minute?" And I said, "Well, yes, I do." I took a glass of wine back to my friend who was accompanying me, and we talked. And Matt's right. He asked, "Can we sit down and talk about short-term rentals?" And I said, "Yes, of course we can." And as Matt pointed out, I hate to tell you this, Matt, you were late, and it was more like 3 hours. We sat down with Matt and Tom Dixon, and we talked about everything having to do with short-term rentals. The issue for Nantucket Neighborhoods First is enforcement. It is about being sure that if there is an issue, there's going to be somebody there who is going to pay attention, and that properties are appropriately registered, which they are not now. There are people who are renting multiple houses who are still not registered, and hopefully they will be by November 1st, which is the deadline to register. And so when I brought that to their attention, Matt and I did, they offered to say, well, maybe we could work on that, the platforms in particular, because we have no idea how many houses are renting on the platforms that are not registered. If you look on Airbnb, or if you look on VRBO, upwards of 800 rentals on Nantucket each. So I said, well, do you think you could do something? And that would be very nice for our members. We have over 300 people who are our supporters. And they did something about it. They decided, even with the Board of Health in those meetings, that it was appropriate to write the platforms along with NAREB and ask them to insist that the properties be registered with the town of Nantucket under Chapter 338, which requires any property that is advertised online or by any realtor to be registered in the town of Nantucket. They did that. Libby wrote a letter. We thanked her, I don't know if she's gone, but we thanked her last night for doing that. Tom Dixon helped, and that letter went out. And there's a response that came back, I understand, from Airbnb, that they are going to start to require Nantucket registration numbers on their listings.
Really?
That is cooperation. It is compromise. And it is a first step and a start. And I can say honestly that I have watched this process for the last 3 months. I have seen people, organizations, try to work out something. And they have, and it resulted in Article 2. There were concessions that were made. I can tell you, I was sitting around that table. They were hard decisions. And I can tell you that Mr. Iverson said, well, the realtors will not agree to that. Okay? So some changes were made. Everybody was taken into consideration. Enough of that. But what I do want to say is that the voters deserve a choice. If you are going to have any possibility of getting something, there is no reason to believe that Article 1 is going to pass on November 4th any more than it has in the past. Okay? Article 2 will be there. Article 2 can be amended, as you've heard. People would like to do that. But if it passes, and the silent majority, by the way, is not here, okay? If it passes, then you will have chances under the general bylaw. If you want to make some of those changes, you can do it. But the voters deserve a choice. Thanks.
Thank you, Terry. Emily?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Emily Molden for the Nantucket Land and Water Council. Thanks for taking the time for this hearing tonight. We have been engaged in this discussion for a number of years now, primarily as it relates to our mission, which is really all about trying to help protect the long-term health and sustainability of the island's resources and environment. And as Mr. Herlihy reminded us, the long-term protector of the turtles. But I am here tonight to support Article 2. I think we have all seen properties that have been developed or redeveloped primarily or solely for short-term rental use that are maxed out as far as square footage, number of bedrooms, amenities to support the highest potential intensity of use. And I think we absolutely agree that short-term rentals are not the only use on the island that results in that type of development or redevelopment. But we do believe that it's a contributing use and that it's one that we should address. We certainly do not oppose all short-term rentals. We support residents being able to rent their properties and their homes, but we do believe that there should be some level of reasonable restriction and limitation to that. Our support of Article 2 is for several reasons. I think they largely boil down to two different points. One is the limitation of the number of days in that peak period, which, as we see it, spreads out that intensity of use during a time when the island's resources are at their most stressed, when we are peaking our electricity usage, when our water infrastructure is becoming increasingly stressed. We also feel that the limit of the number of days per year will reduce the incentive. It will not help with properties that have already been developed or redeveloped to sort of maximize that rate of return. But we do think that it will help reduce the incentive for further properties to be purchased and redeveloped in this fashion solely for short-term rental purposes. So while I think we would support and maybe even prefer something that is even a little more restrictive, we do believe that Article 2 will address these concerns in a way that will really help to moderate the industry going forward and still allow community members to rent their homes. So thank you. We hope that the planning board will support Article 2 and certainly enable it to go forward to special town meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily.
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to, Kathy Baird had her hand up and she just put it back up.
Okay.
She's had her hand up for a little while, and also Penny Herlihy or Mike Herlihy might also have his hand up.
Okay, I'm gonna go to Kathy and then I'll come back to you, Brian. The two Brians. Kathy?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, just quickly, I just have a question on procedure here. So people are talking about pro or con Article 1, Article 2, and my understanding is that your decision here is what recommendations you will make for each of the articles. It's not that you could recommend, you're going to take one of them off the warrant. Like you said, they're going to both be there. So the question is can you recommend both of them or neither of them, or do you have to choose which one you recommend? I just don't understand what the options are here. Could you explain that? Thank you.
So we talked about this last year when they were, quote, competing articles. And the advice that was given to the board was that, it's the leadership of the planning board to make a recommendation to town meeting. And town meeting can go with your recommendation or not go with your recommendation, but you really need to pick one if you're going to recommend either.
Thank you. Did you get that, Kathy? Oh, quick.
Hang on a minute, I don't know if I agree with that.
I think I understand what's saying. I just don't, I know that at the town meeting in the spring, the planning board recommended Article 66 to codify short-term rentals and not the other articles. And so I'm just trying to figure out how you could flip on that, if that could possibly happen here. It just doesn't make sense to me. I think you're between a rock and a hard place. So just saying, thank you.
Just saying, thank you. Rock, paper, scissors.
Thank you, Board. My name's Brian Sullivan. I'm here as a housing advocate. Nat, I wish we could just live free or die, right? Make it a lot easier, but let's just come back to Massachusetts and talk about our community. I am a community member and I am not part of the origination of the decision of Article 2. I'm in agreement with Edward that the board should support Mr. Borgerson's article and lay number 2 on the table. The majority of businesses on Nantucket work until August 1st to pay for housing expenses and visas and insurance and rent in their space and inventory that they're going to sell, and don't become profitable until after August 1st. And Dave, I'm sure you know this as a former retailer who chased their income in September and October, right? That's where you had the opportunity to really make money. And limiting the number of days to this effect is going to eviscerate numerous small businesses on this island. As we see small businesses on this island being sold to large businesses that are from off island, I think we should be protecting these small businesses. And this is a really important thing. As a housing advocate, and as much as I want to create new starts for housing, we need to keep people who are in housing and are here. And there are 1,000,001 scenarios that someone may need to rent their house. And you don't know them all, and we can't project them all, and we can't push our ideal dream of what Nantucket was, because we all have a different vision of what that is, right? Everybody is going to pick a different moment in time and a different sunset and a different restaurant, a different bar and a different thing that is theirs. And that's what they're all trying to achieve in this moment. And we're never going to go back to the moment that you had. I'm sorry. Hold it, honor it, cherish it, love it, and try and figure out a new way to make a new one. We are today in this period of time, and let's not take away from other people who are trying to make it by. Amy talked about how she works multiple jobs and her husband works multiple jobs, and thank God for their pension. But if one of them has a sickness, and excuse me, Amy, for picking you out, but they need to move out of their house and rent it to travel off island to do something, you can't predict that situation because they're not going to stay in the house for a hosted stay. I don't know anybody who does a hosted stay. It's a nice olive branch. It's a great concept, but it is not going to move our market or our economy. The Finance Committee report says that the occupancy tax generated $8.5 million this year, or in 2024. We're going to have to make that money up somewhere. How are we going to make that money up? We can't do it with a Proposition 2.5 override. In this moment, I invoke my buddy Toby Brown. We can't raise our taxes on the people that live here who want to stay in their houses. They're getting screwed by their insurance companies, having to replace roofs. Their assessments are going up on their neighbors around them. Like, these bills are compounding at every angle. The report in the Finance Committee motion continues to talk about all the other things that are going to go underfunded, whether it's our island home opportunity or the road projects or the sewer infrastructure or the water quality that we need at Wannacomet that Emily talks about that's so sacred, right? We had to come up with the funding and install a PFAS, a piece of equipment. We just can't make money magically appear. And right now, we have a luxury fee on a consumer who is happy to support those of us as year-rounders and taxpayers. We get a tax break through an occupancy tax. If we take that money away, we're raising our own taxes, and we need to be real about that. The prices of Greg McKechnie's article was great. You know, he points out that if rental rates go up, all of a sudden rental houses are going to cash flow again. I disagree with Mr. Frame's math. He's using old prices. I think Laura did a great job of pointing out cost to carry and such. Rental, you can't come into the market today and cash flow a rental house. But if we restrict the number of units and demand goes up, prices are going to go up 50%, and then all of a sudden rental houses are going to cash flow. And so what's going to happen? People are going to buy rental houses. And where are they going to find them? They're going to find them in the communities that are historically year-round, and it's going to increase the pace and the rate, and then somebody's going to come in and buy the house next door to me for $4 million, and they're going to put it in a pool, and they're going to rent it. We're going to have more of these problems that we don't have. And Dave, I disagree with you. You are going to create a secret police force. It's going to be the neighbors, because right now we already have it. And they're going to all show up at Marcus's desk. And what are we going to do that? Marcus can't handle it all. He's chasing storage containers right now. Like, what are we doing? Lay it on the table, put through the zoning, spend a little more time if you want to, figuring out who your stakeholders are and talk about the question. But there's a lot that has been wrong here. I think Edward pointed out some interesting points that, you know, codification was over 60% twice, and the other articles were under 30%. And that's an important thing you need to hear. Thank you. I don't need any response.
Thank you. I'm going to push back a little bit on the fact that you represent that all of our short-term rental tax is going to just poof disappear, right? And even by well, you intimated it, right? But even by Mr. Turbott's report, which in my opinion, and it's just my opinion, is very conservative, and I think that's fair, that we're going to lose $2.5 million in short-term rental income, right? That's about right? Is that what I said? Is that what your report said? I hate to put you on the spot, Brian.
Looked at it so many times in the last few days. I believe that the analysis I did, which is fairly conservative because we're trying to build a budget for next year at this point, did say approximately $2.5 million. And I guess I would add to that, which I'll give the preview tonight, what I'm going to say at the Finance Committee meeting, I guess, right? That reduction, we have to find dollar for dollar, make that revenue up somehow through other either local estimated receipts, or there's not enough capacity in Proposition 2.5 in new growth unless we generate massive amounts of new growth, which we're not doing. The last 5 years was an average of 1.7 million, which would mean have to hit new growth of $4.2 million in 1 year to get that, to recover that. So there, on the revenue side, honestly, are very limited ways to make that 2.5 million up, and it will, the report is out there, it's within your packet, it's online with FinCom. It will require substantial changes to the functionality of the government. And I listed some of the budget options that would be on the table, and there's probably even more than that, to be quite honest with you.
So no, but I mean, my point is that, yes, and I think I said it in the beginning, that there's going to be a price to pay for, I think, either one of these if they pass. I see 1.5% deficit in the budget not being an overwhelming price to pay. That's my opinion, right? Because it's a $138 million budget, 2.5, so 1.5% we're going to lose out of our budget, correct?
I think respectfully, we would probably disagree about the price to pay because remember, the town is the largest employer and I can't make up $2.5 million in pencils and paper clips.
Okay. No,
So
listen,
it'll be very,
that's fair,
it'll be
but it won't
very
be evenly-
difficult decisions that town administration will have to make.
Yeah.
So.
No, I agree, but again, 1.5%. So, no, and it's something, I'm not denying it's something, because there is a price to pay, and that's a decision the community needs to make. Yeah.
Okay.
So, thank you, Brian.
You're welcome.
Municipal finance is not easy to understand, Dave.
Oh, no, I'm
So, yeah.
I'm showing him all the respect. I'm not,
It actually is
between
really
that
confusing.
and the STR math, between nights available, nights used, it's all extremely complex and confusing. Brian, did you want to?
I had a follow-up question that I was confused earlier. Someone had said that this article will not allow someone to rent a house for 6 months in the winter and then short-term rent it? Okay, that's not correct, right, in any way, shape, or form?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Anything that's over 32 days isn't counted towards your numbers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which is the problem.
Brian.
Thank you, Dave. Before
Yeah.
I want to call an end to this. We're just beating our heads.
Okay.
I just want to talk about transparency again, and I know, Ms. Rayport, you were called out, and thank you for answering the article on the Act white pages. I want to also say that the Land and Water Council, one of their board members is the head of Act Now. So we need to know that, and we need to know he's a big donor. And I respect the Land and Water Council very, very much. But he, and you will not deny that he has a massive input in what you guys put out.
Brian?
Correct?
I met with both of those parties.
Okay,
and there is a pretty large gulf between the two of them. No, I am being honest.
Gulf
Like,
of-
there's
Gulf of
like
Nantucket or the Gulf
like
of America?
the Gulf of.
There's some hearsay of things that I know from people that used to be on the Land and Water Council that I will not say because they will not come forward. But I mean, if you think that short-term rentals take care of this, I mean, I didn't see the Land and Water Council's letter to Mr. Schwab about his water usage this year, because I think that's more than every short-term renter combined.
Because the state lets them do it.
Yeah, well, let's
So
have a letter.
It's on her radar, trust me.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
we just need to know like where these people are on these boards and where the information and where the stuff is coming from. And I want transparency in this town, as I know that you are Captain Transparency of this town, Ms. Rayport. That's what you've run on, and that's what your basis of all of your political capital has been since you got involved in town politics. And I just want 100% transparency.
And Brian,
That's
let's
all.
be careful. Let's
Let's
not
just asked
attack
for
people. Let's talk
I
about.
didn't attack anybody.
Okay, all right.
Right?
Fair enough.
I just
want to be careful.
I
Okay?
listed facts, correct?
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, can I just chime in since,
Let's not escalate, though.
I don't want to escalate, but I also want to make sure that I'm clear about what's being said and what I'm saying. We as a board aren't being asked to write down, what groups have we given to? It's like, I just feel a little bit like an inquisition has been pointed at me over, and yeah, so, but I think the reason why we're not talking about this is because this is not an Act Now article.
Respect, please.
What?
Oh.
What?
Something
We're
on
not,
the screen.
this is not
Sure.
an Act Now article. And I also think it's important to understand that even though this did come together quickly based on a lot of volunteer work that people did out of civic duty for the benefit of the community, we've all been talking about it for years. We all have ideas that have been walked over the coals at town meeting. We've all done research. So please let's let's talk about the ideas, because the ideas are really interesting and really important, and the identity stuff and, you know, asking people who did what, how many years ago and what, who said what, it's really irrelevant, and I think it's, it brings everything down, and we really are trying to do something for the community.
Thank you. And I'm just, we really need to get moving here. This board has some discussion to do. And so I'd like to really wrap up public comment if we could. I think we've given everyone a fair shot. So I'm going to go to Penny and then back to Emily. And then I think we're going to close the public comment unless someone wants to get up to the mic here and get in line.
Let me jump in so we can move along.
Yes, Mike, the floor is yours.
Yes, I want to, actually, it's interesting that Emily's coming after me. I want to invite Emily out to our place next to the Squam Farm, and we'll go down and see where Linda Holland and Mike Seidel did that spotted turtle study 45 years ago. Probably just around the time she came on the earth. And I want to make one point because I found her commentary, her remarks very interesting, because what she said is she didn't intend to have the Herlihy's situation impacted so heavily by that fine print that we're trying to get removed from Article 2. So we're an unintended consequence. I can understand where going forward you want to discourage, you know, 2 dwellings, a garage, and a pool, and only for short-term rentals. I'm for that also. I have a son who lives in a very nice central neighborhood in town. But we need to think about what the impacts are on existing people like ourselves. If we need to go to legacy or grandfathering or do something of that nature, we need to talk these things through. We can't just act with fine print and legislate people's situations into very difficult corners. So thank you, Emily, for being clear about not wanting to hurt the Herlihy's, and we give you an invitation out to 6 Salty Way.
Thank you, Mike. And nobody sitting at any of these tables takes any joy in hurting any person in the community. So I apologize.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the invitation, Mike. Emily Molden, Nantucket Land and Water Council. I know I don't need to respond to the previous comment, and I thank Brian for the respect. But I don't have any problem sharing with the public that, yes, of course, Peter McCausland has been on our board for many years. He has actually never participated in a board discussion about short-term rentals, and I do have 28 other board members that are a relatively even split of year-round and seasonal residents. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Emily.
Mr. Chairman, just have a clarifying question. When you talked about the tax dollars that come to the town as a result of short-term rentals, it's not going to be cut off, so.
No, that was my point. There will be an impact.
It will be an impact.
We will lose some tax dollars.
But it seems that a number of rental days and so forth, from what is happening and what is being suggested, are close to the same. So my question is, at the end of next year, when you look at the amount that was contributed from short-term rentals, is it going to be 50% less? Is it going to be 75% less, 25% less? So is that total impact as dramatic as was being quoted earlier tonight?
So for 2025, the STR income is, and you have to remember we're talking town fiscal year, was $7,803,000. Does that sound right? So the year before, are you ready for this? Our income was $8,572,000. So we're actually down, which, Brian has to deal with those movements, right? So I think that Brian suggests that we'll be down about 30%. Other numbers I've heard put that number somewhere between 1 million and 2. So there will be a price to pay for this, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it. That is the reality, and the community needs to decide whether they are willing to pay that price.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted the clarification. I may have misunderstood what you were saying earlier.
Okay,
Thank you.
yes.
I just, as part of this, it wasn't all included in this, but when you consider $1 million or $2 million reduction, okay, that's approximately $33 million of revenue that comes into the island as a whole that we get paid 6% of. So as I put in the packet, which we'll probably discuss more tomorrow, we do believe that there will be a ancillary effect potentially on other local estimated receipts. And the primary driver, which would be very difficult to model, but could be impacted, is meals tax. So there is a follow-on effect by reducing. What I've said is I think the town's budget will be impacted by $2.5 million in room occupancy tax. I've noted that we believe that other local estimated receipts very well could be impacted by the change proposed in the article, and I'm just doing the analysis for the article. But it also has the effect because in order to reduce the budget by 2.5 million, you're taking almost $40 million out of the economy as a whole. So I just want everybody to understand, because if you take 2.5 million divided by 0.06, that's the revenue that would have been generated. So there likely will be a follow-on effect to other receipts that are in the local estimated side, which do have the impact of helping to lower the tax rate for the community. So just, I want to make all of that clear, so everybody completely understands how that side works.
I want to paint a picture of that from 2025, right? So our meals tax receipts from 2025 went up 4%. Our short-term rental revenues went down 9%. So I think it's going to be hard to draw that line to that business, right? I think.
But your traditional lodging also went up. So, I mean, if you're going to look at it, you really got to look at it in tandem,
I guess,
right?
yeah,
So,
no, that's true.
it's like
It
the weather.
remained even, I guess, if you want to look at that way, yeah.
As of October, they are.
Huh? Okay.
So I wanted
all right,
to
yeah,
make
no.
that point of clarification so that, because there could be additional impacts other than just this throughout the budget that we will have to plan in time for town meeting for next year. So, okay.
Thank you, Brian.
Hi.
Hi.
Susan Shepherd. I just wanted to make a couple comments of things that have not come up. And for me, it's fundamentally about property rights and seeing those, changed. I bought my home 27 years ago when I could only manage to get out here for a couple weeks a year, and I did rent it at the time. Since, the last 20 years I've been here, and not to get anecdotal, but so I'm going to back off of that. But I care about property rights. We're a resort community. That's what we are. That's what our business is. We're not going to make it on cranberries. We're not going back to oil. So, I mean, that's what we are, and we have to accept that. If we want to be a private island, there's a potential for that as well. But we made a decision in the 60s about development of hotels and about what this island was going to survive on, because for many years it struggled. And so I just want people to keep that in mind. That's fundamentally what we are. And we are sending a mixed message when we say, please come, but actually don't come. And so we really have to decide what we are and who we want to be. And we're either welcoming or we're excluding people. So I just wanted to make those points. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that was good. True. The judge doesn't think it.
Great, all right, so I'm gonna ask for a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion made by John, seconded by Hillary, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, just to be clear, you're closing the public hearing on Articles 1 and 2.
Yeah.
And two.
Yes.
Yes,
Yep.
thank you. So we are gonna debate motions separate, correct? Yes. So
I think we can debate the articles, but the motion will be separate.
Yeah, do you want
meaning we're gonna be
to, does everyone
divulging
want to
back
have a
and forth.
discussion
There's
about?
no way not to do
about-
that.
Well,
Just
I know, we
in
can
general.
debate each article, but it's gonna bleed over.
Yeah, that's what I'm
right?
saying, yeah.
So why don't we start with Article 1? And let's wait till John gets
I
back,
don't even know how to get,
or we can start, actually. So,
I think it's a discussion more than it is about
well, not a
each
debate, a
article.
discussion. Here's your chance.
That
The mic is yours.
Last speaker, was right on the money. Dave,
Listen,
I'm just telling you.
But what I'm telling you is the judge is saying it's not a property right, and we need to fix that.
And that's what
both
Article 1
of
does.
these- And so does Article 2.
Okay, so I haven't said anything during this meeting, so I am now. We don't need to create more Gladys Kravitzes. That's what Article 2 does. We need to get rid of this phantom issue of people being afraid of something that they shouldn't have to be afraid of. If you live next to a party house that's summer occupied, but they're not renting less than 32 days, what makes that any different? You still can call the police or call somebody. Maybe the property owner of that house should be the host phone number, right? Just like we did with restaurant special permits, right? Somebody has to have a phone that they pick up when there's a problem, whether the house is rented for 10 minutes, 10 days, or 33 days. There's no difference. In 2019 or 2018, when the state whipped up this 32-day thing and handed it to us like the ADU, what's the difference? Nothing. It's the same. They gave us a number that we didn't know was coming that doesn't fit this island's traditional way of doing things, whether it's renting for the summer like the old days, which is, boy, you got to be some rich to rent in the summer. And one thing I want to bring up, we don't normally have an audience, although it has shrunk a little. The people that can afford to stay here for 32 days don't pay a tax. Hello? Are we sure? So we're promoting people that have so much money that they can stay here for that length of time and not pay a tax. But we want to discourage people that bring the suitcase with wheels. I love talking about the suitcases with wheels because Frank Spriggs told me they killed the cab business. That was really funny when he said that to me. So anyway, we had steamer trunks when we were still renting, by the way. Those people, we want them to come here. I drove down the boat Sunday morning, and it had to be 15 people walking down Washington Street on our beautiful sidewalks with the telephone poles right in the middle of the sidewalk. We just can't seem to fix that, and we should be worried about that instead of this. But anyway, they're all walking to the boat. Is that a problem? They didn't bring a car. I don't understand the infrastructure conversation. That is the most ridiculous conversation I've ever heard in my life. Because the people that, if everybody rented for the whole summer or was occupied by the owner, you would have more services being used. Because there's somebody in the house all the time, whether there's 5, 6, 8, it doesn't really matter. We make it sound like people that stay here longer don't use the bathroom. I don't know. It's the most ridiculous. I don't even understand where that argument comes from. They leave the windows open with the air conditioning on just as much as somebody stay here for 2 days or a month. Believe me. So we're fighting against ourselves. We're fighting against natural evolution. Somebody brought that up a little bit earlier. I don't remember who the speaker was. It might have been. Right. The natural evolution of how people rent has happened really in the last 40 years since the boat went to Hyannis. That made things change because people could get here easier. When you had to come out of Woods Hole, forget New Bedford, Wow. So you couldn't get here. So you came here longer because it was harder to get here. Okay, and you brought your station wagon with all your junk. And no one cared about traffic then, even though we had a lot of it. We didn't really talk about it the same way we do now. We have a mix of trophy rental houses and average people rental houses that need that income, okay? So one of the things, and Mr. Frame's comments earlier, I have all the respect in the world for him, but everything he said was wrong. Everything. I couldn't believe it, but I understand why he's saying what he said, because he's already been here for so long, doesn't have the $1.5 million mortgage that the younger property owners are gonna have. Try to pay for your house now. If somebody's lucky enough to get a house for $2 million or less, I mean, I can't even believe that that's the number now for like a cheap house. Your mortgage is like $7,000 a month. So what are you doing for extra money? Bartending? Working at Toby's at night? Those days are over. Cutting grass on the weekends? They don't even want you coming to your house on the weekends in Wisconsin. So that's the other little argument that's out there, Joe, the other end of the island. You got Nantucket. I know what's going on in Wisconsin. So anyway, it's the new future of earning a living or extra money is going to be renting, whether it's a room in your basement or a room in your first floor, and you make a space for somebody to come and stay. That's your college education for your kid. There's a million different things that people have to rent for now than it was in the old days. When your mortgage, it cost you nothing to build your house, let alone have a mortgage. It was completely different here. This is one of the things that it really frustrates me, because people think we've always been like this. Nantucket was the poorest place on the planet in the 60s and the 70s. They were giving land away in Tom Nevers in 1965, $5,000 for 3 acres, or actually they were 50,000 square foot lots, $5,000. My parents gave away property, because that was the normal price. This future scares me, because if we're so adamantly opposed to this renting issue, we're taking the ability from year-round residents of the future to be able to sustain their property. So I don't want to turn Nantucket into a private island. We have 2.5 months a year, the 3 months a year of real busy, but the shoulders got brought up earlier, and I think that needs to be addressed as well. The shoulder season is completely different than it was even 20 years ago. Christmas stroll doesn't count as a shoulder season. That's an event that just happens to be when it is. But you have Daffodil, you have the wine festival, but you have other events, the wedding issues. The wedding events are in the spring now and in the fall. They used to only be in the fall. That's all short-term stay stuff, because it is the nature of it. Why would we want to limit people in the summer so that they can't rent when there's nobody here, except on the weekends? I mean, that's unbelievable. Like the fall, the other part of the year shouldn't even be in the conversation for regulation. So then my last thing, sorry, Mr. Chairman, but hey, we're here, and this is a big damn deal, okay? This has been going on way too long. Matt Parker's articles in the 90s. Now, how many people in here remember that? Penny's here. There's a few of you that remember that. When Matt Parker filed those articles in the 90s against rental houses, summer rental, seasonal rental, they didn't say short-term, long-term, they just said seasonal. That was the difference, was to get them to pay taxes. Brian, this is before you were around, but he was trying to get them to pay a rooming tax. But that was it. He wasn't trying to say, we shouldn't be doing this, you're hurting my business. There was plenty to go around. But he was mad because they weren't paying a tax. But we didn't have computer platforms, all these ways to do it, just like a cab meter. We almost put cab meters in. before the online cabs started. So anyway, but he never said anything about limiting. He just wanted them to pay the tax. That was in the mid-90s, okay? That was like 100 years ago compared to what we're arguing about now and how much things have changed over time. The state killed us with this 32-day nonsense. A short-term stay on Nantucket is 3 days. 7 is a long-term. And that's a fact. That's it. I'll chime in later. If somebody else says something that I want to comment on.
Anyone else have a comment? Yes.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, a couple of things. This is my point of view, but this is the time, I guess. So, first of all, we've got different versions of this, but I do believe personally that the regulations, the limitations that we're putting on will help slow investment-only property being bought on the side. By how many, I have no idea. I do think it will help. Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, Mike. Yeah, I think it will to some degree.
Closer to it, yeah.
Are we good? Ma'am, I'm going to use you as the,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I do think, and sorry to repeat myself, but this will help reduce investment-only STRs going forward. We sometimes, if you listen to the conversation, it's almost like some people are saying that Article 2 is going to stop short-term rental income. It's not. This is putting some reasonable guardrails around it. We heard numbers like $70,000 to $100,000, if you're renting out for 10 weeks through the year. If that's something like the number, and it probably is, that's not nothing. That will help owners, offset the cost. So I think it will provide a meaningful earning opportunity for homeowners going forward. So, they're the two financial pieces. But I do think we should think about, preserving the character of our residential neighborhoods. And I think this will do that. It definitely will, if it should eliminate 2 to 3 day rentals, and it's the 2 to 3 day rentals that cause, the majority of turnovers. It's not too much of a stretch to say that it's perhaps 2 to 3 day rentals are one of the, leading factors to party houses and party rentals. So I think it will help reduce that. And, without going back to the good old glory days, I do think that this will encourage more 1 week and more family rentals than what we currently have. And that's not a bad thing in my book, that we perhaps get a better balance of the families that we keep talking about. So, I believe in Article 2. I'm really glad that there's a choice going to be on the table on November the 4th, as it should be. But I, for sure, am a supporter of Article 2.
I'll say some things. So I tried to listen very carefully to all of the comments. I certainly care very much about people's concerns. Most of the concerns were economic, either that we're going to take away a necessary source of lodging and that will harm overall tourism, or we're going to, hurt people's businesses. And I do support Article 2 because when I looked at how, rentals are happening now, I don't think most people are going to have to change their behavior at all. 90% of properties are rented for 80 days or fewer in a year. 95% of properties were rented 8 or fewer times. What was the other stat that I wanted to, the limiting the leases to 7 days. And I just want to point out that the shoulder seasons, there is no limit, right? I mean, Article 2 does not put any 7-day limit outside the months of the peak season period. So if people want to come for Wine Festival and they want a 3-night or 2-night rental, none of that changes. Limiting the leases to 7 days affects 10% of leases. This is all according to the NAREB data. I know that the AirDNA data is a little different and that those places turn over more, but I think we want to support the NAREB members. So I think that this is a lot of concern about, an economic neutron bomb that it's going to be like the topless beach article. Like, where are all the topless people? they never showed up. So I think although we didn't have an economic report, there is economic data out there, and there are other reports in other places that have said that it just doesn't really make that much of a difference because there's so much flexibility in the market already. So then I said what are some of the things that we want to encourage or discourage? Well, we certainly want to discourage the really intensely used party houses, turnovers, the ones that are rented for 200 nights a year or more. And I don't have a problem. Those are the tail ends of the use case, and I don't have a problem limiting those. The other thing is that we want to pursue policies that encourage year-round rentals. So I went back, I looked at the master plan from 2009, which is still our master plan since we haven't replaced it with an updated master plan. We're working on that. And there was zero discussion of any kind of rental. There was zero discussion. There was a lot of discussion of the need for a seasonal workforce, but there was no discussion of where those people stay when they come here. And there was a lot of discussion about our tourism economy, and there was no discussion of where people stay. So we also had testimony in the Ward case where the people from the realtor community, who are the same people who have been here speaking, said that the rentals in those periods of time were fundamentally different, and things started to change around 2000 with the more fast ferries and more flights and easier access to the app-based rentals. So when people say, well, we're going back to like the traditional use, the traditional use has been more of a long-term. So for the folks that say, well, we're putting things back the way they were, things really have changed. I mean, it's not like that anymore. There's this question about, well, if you limit the supply of short-term rentals, the price per week will go up by, Econ 101. And then you're going to suddenly see these houses pencil out for investors who can cash flow them by making short-term rentals, which that will happen for a period of time. But the other thing that will happen is the hosted stay could become more of a factor. So the hosted stay, from a policy perspective, is a really, really attractive part of Article 2. It gets to Mr. Lowell's point about, people are going to generate income from their houses. They're going to rent a place in their basement. They're going to rent their cottage. They can do all of that. There is zero limit on renting your property while you're there. So I think what will happen is if the prices keep going up and up, people will say, you know what? I used to go away to Maine and rent both my houses, but now I'm going to rent my cottage long-term and rent my main house out short-term, because then I have no limits on how much short-term rentals I can make. So we might see, there are a lot of properties with 2 dwellings on them. We might see, and I hope we do see, under Article 2, more people making the calculated decision to offer their cottage to someone like a school teacher or a firefighter or a carpenter or anyone, many of the people who need housing, and then they would have unrestricted short-term rentals on their main house. So, if you're just being purely economic about it, and I know it's also emotional and it's also about property rights, but for the people who are saying, I'm really worried about my business, I'm really worried about the economy, I think we're going to see some motion that could result in some cottages being used, secondary homes being used for long-term rentals. The last thing I will say about Article 2 is that you have to go way back to think about properties going down on Nantucket. But there are plenty of people in this room who were here when the property values went down. I was here in 2008 when property values went down, and I was also working in the investment field in that period of time. And I had someone come up to me and say, hey, there's this house on Nantucket and it's really undervalued, and do you think it would be a good investment for me? At that time, I had private equity firms approaching my firm, we were endowment advisors, with investment products that were buying up houses in Las Vegas that were underwater. So what I'm saying is that we have to protect ourselves when property values go down so that our housing stock does not get bought up by financial investors. And I know it sounds like, well, why would I worry about that? But the world is uncertain. So that's another reason why I think an article that has some guardrails and not just any kind of short-term rental is a good idea. I have a couple questions about Article 1 and why in particular I have concerns about Article 1, and it's not just because it doesn't have guardrails. So John Giorgio said at one point, I wouldn't go passing a bylaw based on a decision that just came down from a trial lawyer. This definition of long-term rental, there's no time attached. It just says, any rental is a long-term rental if it's not a short-term rental. And it's also, my point is that, okay, so if you don't meet the requirement of a short-term rental for any reason, then are you a long-term rental?
Anything over 32 days.
But it doesn't say that in Article 1. It doesn't say that.
It's an assumption of common sense.
Common sense is not the law. Of course it is, but I'm just saying if we pass something that we don't totally understand and we haven't, really explored the implications of what's just been put in there, we could come to regret it. It says any part of a property can be used for rental. So does that mean, I've got my pool rented out to some people and I've got an influencer filming on my front lawn, and also I've got a baby shower going on that is, a rental. I just think there's in Article 1, and maybe John Giorgio can comment on these things, that there are some potential disastrous situations that could come out of just, rentals gone wild, which is what I think we have in Article 1. Thank you.
I think it's safe to say that that fear is why we're still sitting here after 6 years. I don't think John needs to weigh in on that. I think that is the fear that's driving, it's having a problem getting this full codification passed. And I mean, I think it's pretty evident.
But I think this particular Article 1 because it puts in, a long-term rental and any portion can be rented. I think it's a little bit even more concerning.
Okay.
But I mean, again, if we want to hear from
If you
our.
want to hear from John, then you should hear from John. John, do you understand the question?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I think I do understand the question. I just wanted to check on one thing. So the fundamental understanding, which was somewhat upended by the second ward decision, is that a rental use is a residential use. In the same way that if you own the property or you rent it, the only difference or the only concern is the part of Ward 1 that said a short-term rental is fundamentally different than a long-term rental. So I don't quite understand the concerns that are being raised about the definition of long-term rental in Article 1. We can try to poke holes in any of these articles, but I do think that a reasonable interpretation of Article 1 is that a long-term rental is anything that's not a short-term rental, because that's consistent with the traditional notion of let's say, a year-round rental being no different than an ownership. If it's occupied, it's a residential use. So maybe I don't understand the concerns. I think they're a little bit of a red herring, to be honest with you.
Hillary, are you done? Can we move?
Yeah.
Okay, on to Joe.
Thank you, sir. I think, whatever, 6 years ago, we asked you to go and be part of this SDR group. You go deal with it, do everything. You are probably talking in your sleep sometimes about it. But to that, I just think that you've gone and met with everyone. You know everyone's number. You've been going to meet them. So I don't think there's anything you were hiding or anything like that. So I think some of the attacks were unjust. I think you were trying to finally bring this to the finish line. And I think we're down to 2 articles, which is great. That's a great point. But I do think that Article 2, as my brother would say in the FAA, but what if? Like, everything that the FAA does has but what if. And I don't think we've had the time to have a public forum to go over all of the financials, to have, 90 days to review this and go over every detail. And I think that's a real problem. So that's why I have a problem with it, because we're talking about 1%, but then it kind of goes into taxes. It goes into that person not going to town and going to Lemon Press or wherever it is to go buy something because they're not there. So I think there's just impacts that we're just not going to see. Right. It's just going to keep growing and growing. And if Article 2 was to go in and if there was a positive recommendation, I would say that every year this needs to be voted on, or every 2 to 3 years, because we've been at this for 6 years. If this goes in and has major impacts or impacts that are going to slowly drive the island into the ground, the mom and pop businesses are going to go away, then the renters of the ownership of downtown businesses or buildings are going to go seek off-island companies. And I won't name them, but we all know them, the big major brands. We're going to create the Hamptons. We're going to have that downtown. We're going to lose the tiny little mom and pop shops. We're going to lose all these little tiny organizations. And then you think like, oh, well, you know, they have 7 weeks that people can go there. But let's just say that's 7 weeks. In their lease, if they make that profit and they go over their margins, there's landlords in Nantucket that, that's profit. You've made over that number. I need that money back. That's mine, has nothing to do with you. And it's not an average of the year, it is that month. And that is something that could have major impacts on these small businesses. And I really don't think that that's something we can investigate right here and now, because I understand why Brian did this. We're up against we got to get this done. Let's just do one meeting. I think that's great. But I think that Article 2 just has unforeseens we just don't know. And I think that's a problem. And I one year went to 6 weddings and got 6 tuxedos and ran all around. But everywhere I went, I was in a town, community, bed and breakfast, wherever it was. And I was there for 3 to 4 days. I didn't stay the week. I couldn't stay the week. I was paying my college loans and all that other good stuff and paying rent on Nantucket. But I feel that Article 2 is age discriminant. It doesn't look at that young group that's coming. And I know that's why some people are having problems with it.
In the wedding season, there's not the minimum 7 day, though.
No, but there are people that get married in the summertime, Dave. Like, to say that's not. And listen, my sister says
like they
her shoulder
do,
seasons,
yeah.
that's when she's the busiest, right? So, but to that point, what if you are coming? What if there is someone that is coming to that? So it's just, that has been really kind of a problem that I kind of foresee. I think, going back to Brian Turbot, I think that's really important. But I'm also talking to people that have inherited houses from their grandparents or the parents. And I know this is 7 years ago, he shared with me that it's $250,000 a year taxes. And that's a real number, and they have to rent it. They said, we would rather be in the house every day, all summer, come anytime, come and go, but they have to block it out and look at it, and then have a week that they have to prep the house and put it all back, hide everything in owner's closet, and then take everything out, roll back and forth. So there was just a time frame that just we're not seeing. And to Amy's point, I know what you did, but there's also some local voices that don't come up and speak and don't want to do it. But going back to my brother's comment, but what if? What if you have cancer, you have to go off or do something, and the coffins, they left and they rented the house, and then the house got on fire. So there's so many problems that I just see with this. I'm not saying it's horrible. I'm just not saying that it's great. And I know you said it's on a knife's edge and all that fun stuff, but I also, as a planning board member, you did all the work, right? No public meetings and stuff. You met on people's kitchen tables, living rooms or wherever, a coffee shop, scaring old ladies and old women.
My best.
So, sorry, I mean that respectfully. But at the same time, it hasn't come to us to break it down.
Yeah.
So this is where I have a little problem. It's not a planning board article, but it is because we've asked you to carry this, and you've done a Herculean job to bring it to here and not have 5 other articles and muddy the water and confuse and all that stuff. I wish that Article 1 would come in, we would just vote that in, and then right after that, we just had an open town meeting. I think it was Lincoln that Judy Barrett said, has a public forum, and they do it before their town meetings. I would love that if we could, hey, everyone, while you're in the room and you voted on 1, let's have you talk about 2, and then kind of bring it back. And if it is something that should go into town, then that's great. Then let's look at it. But I just don't think that, I know who you met with, but I think town meeting or a poll, I think someone said, which I would applaud. I think that would be some way to go. We did that in Nantucket, and we got a lot of good feedback from the 660 owners in Nantucket. I just think there's ways we need to kind of step back and pause on this. But I'll stop there. Yeah.
And listen, I completely respect everyone on this board's position. You know that. I think I can just historically tell you that John and I suffered, I'm gonna say suffered, through the short-term rental work group, right? And we did all those things.
Yeah.
Right? We did all of those things. The more data we got, the cloudier it got. It didn't become more clear. It became more cloudy.
Yeah.
So, and I'm not saying you're wrong in any of the things you say. I'm just saying, we've done that at some point in this process. We had we had sitting in this room, we had public workshops with people that would come and we'd form groups and we'd move around and we'd understand everyone's position. And what came of that was, and I still stand behind it being a very good piece of work. But when you try to accommodate all the what ifs and ands and therefores, it becomes far too complex for it to be a passable piece of legislation. And so that's kind of so I'm not saying you're wrong in asking for all these things, but I'm saying in my experience, those things have been, I mean, I think the work group was good and productive, but in the end, it didn't turn out a product that could pass.
Right. No,
Right.
but I just think that some people don't have time to come to these meetings or whatever it is. I mean, like I said,
No, I agree.
there's like 10 months, we talk about
Listen.
something and then we get in the warrant, we get to town meeting and people are asking questions that we've answered.
I'm not claiming it's perfect. My perspective is, and I've spoken way too much about this, especially
That's why I
tonight,
said I'm talking
but-
in your sleep.
But yeah, but my perspective is that it's important to have an alternate. And I think either of these articles are better than what would, I disagree with Mr. Frame like you did, that let everything fail because we're just gonna have V's, which is, I mean, people think that 70 days is a problem, when if V's ruling stands, you will only be able to rent your house 1 day less than you use it. And that would be devastating.
Yeah.
So I think it's very important that we have a second option on the table, and people, and I hope the real estate professionals and anyone else involved understands the value of fixing this zoning problem and moving on. And I get your thing, well, we should revote it every 6 years. I would argue that if the impacts are that devastating, it would take one town meeting to turn it over. I mean, look what happened with the building moratorium, right? And so.
But does it? That's completely different. We're talking, and I don't mean disrespecting anyone, but that was affecting locals and not the summer community or short term. That's why I'm just saying there's a little bit of.
There's rollover. I mean, listen, if
there's
it's
apples and oranges.
devastating to the summer community, in the end, it's gonna be devastating to us.
Right, but yeah.
And so I think that it would be turned over quickly if it was that devastating. So that's just my opinion, and again, I respect every board member's opinion. So we should probably, unless, Howard, would you like to, Howard's like, please. I signed up for this.
I think you guys all have very interesting opinions on this, and I think you all have really, really good opinions of what you think is the right thing to do. My personal opinion is something definitely needs to be done, and whatever you do is not irreversible.
Thank you. And Abby, I'm sorry, would you like to comment on this? Tending to her child.
I think she fell off.
Okay, all right, great. So with that said, I would entertain a motion on Article 1, and then we can discuss comment.
All right, so I just want to make a comment about the comments. Is what I said at that last meeting, the Zoom meeting on the Wednesday of like the Last Supper, right? I mean, that's what it was acted like, the Last Supper. So Leslie and Megan, you guys, we have to have the numbers of the votes, not just yes or no on the warrant, and we have to have comments on both sides of each article. In my opinion.
Each motion can be accompanied
By, yeah,
by a comment.
but no, but if.
You want the metric of the vote.
I don't want the vote to look like it was unanimous to the average person that doesn't know, okay? That is wrong.
No, that's.
This is not, the 102 article
That's
town
gotta
meeting.
keep his
This
local
is
clout.
1 and 2. That's the way it needs to be.
No, I think
It's
that's
the
got a good point
transparency
there.
that we all say we want.
I'm not gonna argue that. If we want, I think we should put it, if it was a 3-2 vote, it should be
I mean,
reflected.
we
I
banned
was just
swimming
looking
pools
at you
in
like that
town
'cause
with
I
by
didn't understand
one
what you
vote.
meant.
So, you
Right,
know,
so whatever the vote
glad you did.
was, should be reflected in the motion, and I'm fine with that. I mean, listen.
Yeah.
If we're divided, we're a reflection of the community. And
Okay.
and that's fair.
That needs to be known.
And we've just
Especially
decided it's gonna be
this
known,
issue.
okay? We good?
We are. I just want to make sure that we have that, because I have this feeling somebody's forgotten what we talked about at the last meeting, because it was 2 weeks ago. That's a long time.
So with that said, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
May I make a motion that the planning board take no action on Article 1?
I'll second that.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No.
No.
Okay, that passes 3-2. Would we like to discuss? Dad, it's not your car that's gonna get firebombed when we walk out of here, all right? Just don't park close to me.
I'm friendly with everybody, even if they don't say hi to me.
So, for a motion, I mean, I would like to suggest a motion that says that Article 1 would address the zoning issue and resolve the legal, the legal issues we've had or members of this town have had, and is a viable article.
Well, how does that, sorry, and why would that be your comment?
Because I think it's an honest comment.
Well, Mr. Chair, I don't think it is viable.
Okay, well, then we can leave that out if you don't want, but I
Yeah.
think that people need
Do
to
we
understand.
vote on that
No,
comment?
Well, we will vote, we know we're gonna vote on
True
the comment,
comment.
but I'm,
Can we
before
have
we
a
get to
ma-
the vote, let's do some horse
Can we have a
trading here.
majority comment and a minority comment?
I think we need to agree on one comment.
Oh, okay.
I think so. And
Well,
so,
I guess I would say the reason why I voted to take no action is because Article 2 also achieves what we really need for our community, which is to have, short-term rentals be a legal zoning use.
yeah,
And that it does it in a way that will gently encourage year-round housing for the reason that I mentioned. And again, it's on the margin. It addresses concerns that we've heard loudly in the community at past town meetings, which is to have some guardrails on short-term rentals, whereas Article 1 does not propose any type of guardrail or limit to protect our housing stock and to limit disruptions, further limit disruptions.
I mean, it does, Article 1 does come with our existing 123, so it does offer some protections. And I don't hate, I think it should be more general. I think that it's a viable article, or I'm talking about 2, but that it also addresses community concerns that we've heard through the past 6 years of this, instead
Article
of
2.
identifying
Yeah.
each.
So maybe the comment should be relevant to both of them. There should be one comment on both motions, because it's hard to really separate them out. We're saying we like both of them because they address a need.
Well, I'm not saying, I
No.
don't think we're saying we like, I think we're stating the fact that Article 1 will resolve our zoning issues. That's.
Article 1 stops the lawsuits.
And stops the lawsuits.
And continues what we're already doing now and sets us up for future regulations
It's a little
at
long.
regular
We
town
need to
meeting.
keep this
No, but it does.
But it doesn't.
That's a
I'm
fact.
I don't agree that it
It
sets
doesn't
us up.
stop the lawsuits? Yes,
No,
it
no,
does.
I don't agree that it sets us up for future
Sure it
regulations.
does,
I
just
think
like
it sets us-
legalizing driving.
It sets us
Or
up
if
for.
we were driving around without license plates and all of a sudden we got our cars registered. That's what we're doing. That's what this is. We've been driving around for 100 years without a
There
license
is
plate.
still, I think there's still the option to further regulate through a general bylaw.
Yeah, there
That's the reality. And-
That will
and I
happen
said
too.
That it will
It
be
will.
more difficult once it's codified, I believe, in my opinion.
No, it'll be less confusing and keep the voters focused on one thing instead of being so confused at
All right,
town
let's-
meeting.
let's
Which is,
focus
by the
back.
way, part of what is the
Matt,
problem.
Can we get back to our comment on, let's start with our comment on number one.
I think the reason why we're not, what the majority of the board is not supporting number one is because it doesn't have guardrails.
I think you're accurate.
Okay, so,
Like zoning incentives.
So maybe we can add that into the comment. We can say, this article will achieve the goal of legalizing short-term rentals in our bylaw and stop the litigation. And I think that that's it. And
but
then we
without
say, we
guardrails.
favor,
but without guardrails.
but instead of saying it there, why don't we say we favor Article 2 because it does everything that Article 1 does, but includes sensible guardrails?
Mr. Chair, so.
Yes.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Go to the mic.
Since you wrote the article,
Go to the
why
mic.
are you allowed to- Go to the, sorry. Just procedural. Since you wrote the article,
Well, Mr. Giorgio wrote the
Well,
article.
Mr. Giorgio, but you brought it to him.
Yeah.
Why are you actually now voting on this article? Because when I bring an article that's against yours, I'm automatically losing a vote, right? Like, because there's no way that you're ever voting against your own article and supporting mine. So basically, the board
Well,
is split.
it's a board article.
Okay,
Mr. Chair, may I?
Yeah, please.
The planning board is required on all zoning articles to make a report and recommendation. And that's what the board is discussing right now with respect to Article 1, and we'll do the same with respect to Article 2. So town
Brian
meeting
is
really
an
cannot
analogy.
act, may I finish? Town meeting may not act on a zoning article without a report and recommendation from the planning board. Doesn't have to be a positive recommendation, but there has to be a public hearing, a report and recommendation.
Dave doesn't have a conflict of interest in this matter.
No. John, he's questioning my ability to vote on the article that I helped create.
Well, that's not a conflict of interest.
There you go.
okay. I mean,
Yep.
Could you repeat again your comment? Because I thought it was really good. You were starting to say both articles do this, but the Article 2
Article
provides
2
this.
Article, now I've gotten all, so Article 2 resolves the litigation issues, legalizes short-term rentals, and adds sensible guardrails. Whereas Article 1 doesn't, and that's why I think the board favors it and is an honest comment.
I would suggest, I don't know how you guys feel about it, say both articles address the lawsuit issue.
Yeah.
Article 2 goes a bit further to put guardrails in place.
But we're doing one comment for each, correct?
Are you,
You don't have to,
Be a little
Mr.
bit
You gotta
Chair.
make it less confusing and have one for each.
are you doing the same comment for each, or are you doing a separate? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you could have the same one sentence for both of them.
Yes,
and
we
then-
have the same one sentence and just add the
That-
guardrail portion into the
Does that
second.
work for you, Nat?
No, I like how you started that. It's good. But again, there needs to be an explanation, something about codification of all renting. Like it isn't just this. This whole thing with 32 days could change next year in Boston.
Town council's asked us to steer clear of that.
Okay, so I think that we need to have something in there about legalization for this town meeting, because this town meeting is only about one thing. This isn't,
And that's what we're saying.
but as far as future general bylaw, there has to be something in there about general bylaws where regulations can be brought forth, and it's a simple majority vote for general bylaws.
We're not writing a paragraph.
I understand that, but I still feel that it needs to be
You can bring that up on
clear.
town meeting floor.
It needs to be clear to the voters.
And you can bring that up in town meeting floor. You can stand up and say, I support Article 1. And let's be clear that there is an avenue to further regulation through general bylaws. I don't think it belongs in our comment.
Yeah, and I think a simpler version might be the better way to go here, just for people to know what A is and what B is, and then people can stand up at the meeting and add the character to the why you are pro or against, and that's where that really belongs. But this simple argument of one addresses the law, and the second one does the same, those are just really simple, so people can understand and make a distinction.
Article 1 addresses the lawsuits and continues as we have, legally.
Yes.
All right, just so you all know, like, we have to get this motion and the comment out, like, before we leave here tonight.
Yep.
Or else tomorrow morning, first thing, which means I'm not going to have time to
Jill
rewatch the
is gonna
video.
find us and kill us if we don't.
And I'm not going to have time to rewatch the video and try to get all this straight.
Yeah.
So let me read to you what I have. That
Okay.
I'm not sure any of you have actually said, but this article would address zoning issues related to short-term rental litigation that this town and some residents have faced. However, the majority of the board felt that it was not restrictive enough and did not include adequate guardrails.
There you go.
Vote 3-2.
Well,
Oh, 3-2. I have it in the
I
motion.
mean, well, first of all, I think that's generally very good, Leslie, and thank you for capturing that, even though we're all going back and forth. I don't think we need to say it twice. So I think what you said was it's not restricted enough and doesn't incorporate guardrails. I would just say it doesn't incorporate guardrails, that it doesn't incorporate guardrails, period. Article 1 would end the lawsuits, and
Plural.
in the lawsuits and make short-term rentals legal in our zoning code, but it does not include guardrails. Additional.
If I may,
It doesn't include additional guardrails. I agree. It is a pretty general rule. Guardrails against
I
what?
think additional is important, whoever added that in, yes, because one does
We already
have
have a lot
existing
of
regulations in place.
We already have a lot of rules.
Right.
So I think additional guardrails is appropriate, not just guardrails.
Yeah, I mean, if we get additional guardrails, if we get into any specifics, it's just going to take way too long to get detailed about why we're concerned about the extra time, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm happy with that.
if I may, Mr.
I
Chair,
don't think we need to have anything about guardrails.
Guys, I can't.
I don't think we should have anything
John?
about guardrails, Article 1, because
John,
Mr. Chair, I thought,
you got the magic bullet for me, please?
when I heard Leslie read what she had, I said to myself, that's perfect.
Okay, so.
That's my
Can
opinion.
you read that one more time, please?
I have now changed it, so let me hit the undo button until I get back to that. 1 second, I'm still tapping over here. Okay, there we go. All right, this article would address zoning issues related to, no, hold on. There we go, let's start again. This article would address zoning issues related to short-term rental litigation that this town and some residents have faced. However, the majority of the board felt that it was not restrictive enough and did not include adequate guardrails.
And is that?
beyond what we have now, something like that.
We don't have any now.
Will you read it
Yeah,
one
we
more
do.
time for me, please? I'm sorry.
All right. All right. This article would address zoning issues related to short-term rental litigation that this town and some residents have faced. However, the majority of the board felt that it was not restrictive enough and did not include adequate guardrails.
Leslie, the only thing that's sort of bothering me a little bit is just guardrails, is that's a bit of a generic
Yes.
I do agree with you on
It
that.
sort of needs a wording.
What do you want,
Additional,
restrictions?
additional.
Well, what are the guardrails against? I mean, to my mind, I'm just speaking for myself, they're guardrails against excessive commercialization. I mean, that's why we're
That's general.
limiting it.
Well, no, that, for me, that is specific.
We're getting into all this
Oh, that's
crazy
so-
wordsmithing again, that,
Yes.
that will make this go
Because you're
on
trying to have a
forever.
word that
So,
doesn't need to be
What
there.
about
that's
adequate
why.
limitations?
Bingo.
Bingo.
And your first word.
I'm sorry, Leslie, it was adequate, what?
Limitations.
Limitations. And I think instead of address, resolve.
Okay. All right, final read through. This article would resolve zoning issues related to short-term rental litigation that this town and some residents have faced. However, the majority of the board felt that it was not restrictive enough and did not include adequate limitations.
Sorry.
Is good?
Yeah.
Can someone make a motion,
switched.
please?
So, move to accept the comment. Move to adopt the comment as written by Leslie.
Yep.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Hillary, seconded by John. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right.
The second one should
The
be
next
easier,
comment.
right?
This one should be easier.
All right, I just need to get down there, hang on.
Take a motion on the article itself
Right.
first.
Right, that's, Megan just said something important, which is we do have to make a motion on the article first.
Oh.
I thought we already did.
Oh, on
Article
Article 2.
two.
All right, so I would entertain a motion.
I make a motion to not adopt.
Second.
Motion made by Nat. You guys want this to go on forever, seconded by
A little
Joe.
payback.
All in favor?
No.
Aye.
No. All
Put
right.
on fighting. Hell.
Do I have another motion, please?
I'd like to make a motion to adopt Article 2 with no significant amendments other than technical changes to clarify the intent of the article.
I'll second for a comment.
No.
Were there technical changes?
There's no technical changes. We're gonna add a comment separate.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay.
So
And then
just,
why
you're either
technical?
adopting the article or not adopting the article, or offering those suggestions right now.
That's the PMAC comment.
I take back my second.
So, so your motion is to,
So my motion is to adopt Article 2.
I second that.
All right. To give a positive recommendation.
Positive, yeah. Recommend to adopt. I
Okay.
second that.
I'm
John
going
made
to
the
say
motion.
John made the motion. It was
I seconded
seconded
it.
by Hillary. All in favor?
Aye.
No.
No.
Stonewallers. All right. And the comment you have? Leslie?
I didn't write one yet.
I know you have one in the back of your head.
All right, hold on just a second. I was too distracted with the back and forth on the other one. All right, just give me 1 second. It's not so easy to move around on my laptop. How about this article would resolve zoning issues related to short-term rental litigation that this town and some residents have faced, period. And then we can add something about the board felt that, restrictions contained in this article or limitations contained in this article were necessary to
How about unreasonable?
like residential neighborhoods. I mean, I'm not really sure on this one.
I want to.
You talked a lot about the other one. It was easy for me to.
I want to steer away from specific reasons and kind of stick with a more general, addresses concerns that have been expressed by the community in past town meetings. Is that fair?
Or we could just say the opposite of, we could say that it has
Projected.
it has adequate, what did we call it?
Limitations.
Yeah, it has adequate limitations.
Okay, there we go.
I mean, I would like to say a lot more, but I agree we're not going to get there.
Yeah,
And
no,
so we
listen,
can talk about it on town meeting floor.
Everyone has an opportunity to speak to it on town meeting floor that wants to. and
Yeah,
I
we
think
can
that We
explain.
should keep this short and sweet.
Could we just say that adequate limitations contained in the zoning and the general bylaw were included? Because this one does have both. The other one was just zoning.
That's the catch.
Can you read the whole thing again, Leslie? I'm sorry.
Haven't quite finished typing it yet, but just a second. This article would resolve zoning issues related to short-term rental litigation that this town and some residents have faced. The majority of the board felt that adequate limitations were included for both the zoning and general bylaws.
I'm sorry. Can you read it one more time, Leslie?
Right. This article would resolve zoning issues related to short-term rental litigation that this town and some residents have faced. The majority of the board felt that adequate limitations were included for both the zoning and general bylaws.
Okay, so we could say that, just make it active. The majority of the board felt that it also includes adequate limitations.
And are we putting 3 to 2, not just majority?
I
No.
put
We need
that,
to do that.
I included that on the motion. I didn't put it
Okay.
again on the comment.
All right, as long as it's in there somewhere, I don't care, as long as it shows 3 to 2.
All right, so
One
we're
last
getting a suggestion that sorry, read it again.
Okay, this is for Article 2. This article would resolve zoning issues related to short-term rental litigation that this town and some residents have faced. The majority of the board felt it also includes adequate limitations for both the zoning and general bylaws.
Okay, so can we change adequate to appropriate? And then I think it's good.
Okay. One last time.
Mincing.
This article would resolve zoning issues related to short-term rental litigation that this town and some residents have faced. The majority of the board felt it also includes appropriate limitations for both the zoning and general bylaws.
Good to me.
Is it for or in? It's okay, it's okay.
It's okay. So I would entertain a motion.
Motion to adopt the comment as just read by Leslie.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
No.
Oh, he got an aye. He got an aye.
I don't know. I mean, we voted 5-0 on the other one, so I don't know. That's not in there.
Is there something you wanted to see different?
No.
No.
I'm
Okay.
good, thank you. Just gonna keep it now.
Okay.
So,
Stay consistent.
so this is it for meetings for this? What are we doing?
I think we have one more
A lot
meeting.
of more meetings just popped up the other day, and I'm gonna have to write them all down.
They're on your agenda, printed
Okay.
right at the bottom.
Okay, all right. All right, what I mean as far as this,
We do have to have a follow-up, but this,
Because of the-
your motion will be
Sure.
printed in the warrant.
all right.
Yeah.
Okay.
These, their opinions are really.
Are we adjourned? Someone make a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, motion made by Hillary, seconded by Nat. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.